house belongs to me and my parents. Write up the divorce papers and leave Liam, my husband. He treats me like a maid and always favors his parents. I've been patient until now to not upset my parents, who were happy about our marriage. But if he's going to act like this in front of them, I'm done. Okay, I'll do what you want. I walked out of the room, bringing my upset parents with me. When will he understand all his mistakes? I can't wait for that moment. I'm Jessica, 29 years old. My parents were both 40 when I was born. They really wanted a child, but it was tough, and the treatments for infertility weren't as good back then, so they went through a lot of sadness. Just when they were about to give up, I came along. They still talk about it happily, even now, because I was the child they'd been waiting so long for. My parents showered me with love. When I see my old photos, I can feel how much they cared for me. Even though my parents weren't rich, they made sure to celebrate special occasions like my birthday, Easter, and even my kindergarten graduation in a big way. They were super supportive of my education too. Whenever I showed interest in something, like learning English or reading, they'd jump to support me. They'd enroll me in English classes and buy me lots of books. They always said, "If it helps with your studies, just tell us, and we'll make it happen." Looking back, I realized they must have struggled to pay for all of it, but they never let on. They always had smiles on their faces and threw big celebrations whenever I did well in school. As I got older, my friends would sometimes think my parents were my grandparents, but it didn't bother me. I met my husband, Leon, through a matchmaking service. We both had elderly parents and were only children, so we connected over our similar situations. We shared hobbies and had great conversations. Our relationship progressed smoothly, and we eventually decided to tie the knot. My parents were overjoyed at our wedding and blessed our marriage with tears of love. In the beginning, I was working after we got married. Both of us have elderly parents, which wasn't something we were unhappy about, but we couldn't help but wish they were younger. It's tough to raise kids when you're older. We wanted to start a family soon, so Leon suggested that I quit my job to focus on raising a child. I loved my job, but his words made sense. I remembered my mom telling me about her night shift job and the stress it brought, and how it might have affected their ability to conceive. So I thought it might be a good idea to quit my job and focus on creating the right environment for having a baby. Leon also reassured me by saying, "You could always go back to work when our child is older." That made me feel better about the decision. Luckily, I had a professional certification that meant I could go back to work whenever I wanted. So I decided to leave my job and focus on being a full-time homemaker. But after we got married, Leon's attitude changed. Before, I thought he saw me as an equal, but suddenly, he acted like he was better than me. Being a housewife isn't easy. I had to cook 3 meals a day, do all the cleaning, laundry, and everything else. Things that were no big deal when I lived alone became a challenge, especially since Leon was really picky about everything and wouldn't let anything slide. Dinner should always have at least 3 dishes, and there should be hot pancakes for breakfast. My mom managed it all even while she worked. When I wake up, my suit and shirt should be ready on a hanger. Just grab my bag and go, he'd say, as if that's the least a housewife should do. That's how my parents always did it. Whenever I tried to object, he'd snap back, "You're a housewife, remember? Don't get too high and mighty while living off my money." That became his go-to line. Despite his complaints about me spending his money, what Leon gave for household expenses barely covered it all. I spend my days carefully managing our budget, constantly searching the internet for ways to save money. One day, I mentioned, maybe I should go back to work. Leon shot that idea down with, "You used to work at a law firm, right? Being a secretary won't bring in much. I won't let you neglect the housework for that." So he wouldn't even consider letting me return to work. I wondered if Leon was misunderstanding something, but by then, I was too exhausted from his constant complaints and yelling to argue. Honestly, I wasn't sure if I could keep up with the quality of housekeeping if I also had a job. Plus, I didn't want to disappoint my parents, who were thrilled about our marriage, so I couldn't talk to them about it. But it wasn't just Liam's behavior that bothered me. He often invited his parents over. Whether it was Mother's Day, Father's Day, or their birthdays, he'd find any reason to have them visit and expect me to prepare the meal. Each time, he'd give me extra money, telling me to buy fancy fish or make steak with premium beef. When his parents came over, Leon would shower them with gifts. They'd eat and drink as if our house was theirs, without ever thanking me. Then they'd leave. Once, I brought up to Leon the idea of inviting my parents over occasionally. I told him I admired how he honored his parents, and I didn't oppose it, but I hoped we could also include mine. Leon's response was immediate and harsh. He snapped, "Why would we do that? Understand this, I'm the one paying for everything. Why should I spend money on your parents who aren't even blood related to me?" With that, he shut down the conversation. Feeling defeated, I began using my savings from before we were married to secretly buy gifts for my parents. Then, one day, my parents reached out to me with a troubled look. They explained that there had been a fire in the apartment next to theirs, and part of their home was damaged. Thankfully, they were safe, but their house needed significant repairs. They were temporarily staying in a makeshift shelter. I made the decision to visit my parents, knowing they were going through a difficult time. Despite their troubles, they welcomed me warmly. During our conversation, my father gently asked about my marriage, and although I felt a pang of sadness, I assured him that everything was all right between Leon and me. When I asked about their future plans, my father explained that their old house, which had been partially damaged in a fire, was too old to salvage. They were considering moving into a modern Renaissance apartment. My mother sighed, expressing sadness at the thought of leaving behind the memories in our family's ancestral home. It was then that I made a decision. I resolved to discuss the situation with Leon when I returned home. "Remember when I mentioned my parents' house was damaged in a fire?" I began. Considering their age, I was thinking of buying them a new house, one with accessibility features. Leon's response was blunt. "Where's the money coming from?" "I'm not contributing." "As expected," I replied. "I don't plan on building a mansion, so it won't be a financial burden on you. I intend to use my savings from before we were married." After a moment of consideration, Leon casually replied, "Guess even a law firm clerk can save that much." "Well, if it's not coming from my pocket, then it's fine." And with that, I made the decision to gift my parents a new home. I felt it was finally time to repay their kindness. Months later, I informed Leon, "I'll be helping my parents move tomorrow." Leon's response was curt. "All right, just don't forget about your household duties," before retreating to the bedroom. The next day, I assisted my parents with their move. Unbeknownst to me, a group of individuals had begun following me. As we carried my parents' belongings into their new home, we settled into the living room, filled with the joy of being reunited as a family after so long. Suddenly, to our astonishment, Leon and my in-laws burst in. With a declaration, Leon announced, "From today, this is my house." Leon's sudden appearance caught me off guard. "What are you doing here?" I asked, surprised. He chuckled, saying, "I heard you were moving today, so I followed you." Confused, I replied, "Moving? What do you mean? This is my parents' house." But Leon insisted, "I've been supporting you all this time. You should be grateful to have married someone like me. Now it's your turn to take care of my parents." His words filled me with disgust. As I stared at him in silence, he coldly declared, "I've canceled the lease on our apartment. Pack your things and leave." My father began to speak, but I silenced him. With a strange calmness, a plan formed in my mind. Instead of my father, I asserted, "This house belongs to my parents and me." Leon laughed, mocking me, "Do you not understand English? I'm saying the house you bought was mine all along. It's not yours, we're your parents. Oh, and I've left divorce papers for you to sign at home. Make sure you submit them." Ignoring my parents' attempts to intervene, I reluctantly acquiesced to Leon's demands. "Fine, I'll do as you say." I conceded, then directed the movers to reload the truck we had just unloaded. While overseeing the process, another truck arrived, bearing Leon's and his parents' belongings. Comforting my bewildered parents, I promised, I'll explain everything later. Just trust me for now. Together, we vacated the premises. During our journey, I divulged the situation to my parents. I've kept silent about this until now, I confessed. Upon hearing the full story, they grasped the gravity of the situation and commended my actions. Their praise stirred within me a familiar sense of joy, reminiscent of the praise I received from them as a child. A few weeks later, my phone rang incessantly, with Leon's name flashing on the screen. With a sigh, I reluctantly picked up. Before I could even say hello, Leon erupted. "What's going on with this house you bought? Someone's threatening to call the cops if I don't leave." "Yes, that's right," I confirmed, bracing myself for what would come next. Leon's voice rose in disbelief. "So when you said it was our house, you meant this rental?" I couldn't help but chuckle at the misunderstanding. His reaction was immediate and furious. "Stop laughing and explain. Wasn't this house meant for your parents?" Taking a deep breath, I began to unravel the tangled web of miscommunication. I clarified to Leon the sequence of events. How the house I purchased for my parents was undergoing renovations, but due to a mistake by the renovation company, it wasn't ready on time. In a last-minute scramble, they arranged for us to stay in a model home until the renovations were completed. However, Leon and his parents mistakenly moved into the model home before we could explain the situation. Seizing the opportunity for revenge after Leon's outburst, I chose to play along with his misunderstanding. Following that ordeal, I relocated all our belongings to a rented storage unit and temporarily stayed in a hotel with my parents. Following Leon's instructions, I proceeded with the divorce papers, ultimately ending our marriage. My parents expressed their wish that I had confided in them earlier, but I believe it all worked out for the best. Being with my parents during that time was invaluable, and I successfully parted ways with Leon. Now, we're happily settled in our newly renovated home. I made sure not to disclose our new address to Leon, ensuring he remained unaware of our whereabouts. On one occasion, he questioned how I planned to support myself without him, assuming I was merely a stay-at-home wife. With a touch of disdain, I clarified, "You've been mistaken all this time. I'm actually a professional lawyer." Leon appeared taken aback, his response tinged with confusion. Reflecting on our initial meeting at a matchmaking service, I remembered how Leon had asked about my profession. At the time, I mentioned working at a law firm, but he assumed I was a secretary. I didn't correct him then, as I'd grown accustomed to people reacting negatively when I mentioned being a lawyer. It surprised me that Leon still thought of me as a secretary. It revealed his lack of interest in truly knowing me. It seemed he preferred the idea of a housewife over an equal partner. Realizing this, I calmly explained, as we're married, I could rightfully claim ownership of the property purchased with my pre-marriage savings. Asserting my rights, I continued, those savings remain mine and aren't subject to division. If you have objections, we can settle it in court, but the outcome is clear. With that, silence greeted me from the other end of the line. Disregarding Leon's remarks, I bid him farewell with a simple, "Take care of your parents," before ending the call. Details of what ensued reached me through a former colleague, now a fellow attorney. Despite his repeated attempts to reach out, I found it necessary to communicate with him solely through legal representation. Leon persisted in demanding the return of money spent during our marriage. After negotiations with our respective lawyers, he reluctantly grasped the impracticality of his request, though not without disappointment. Such reactions were to be expected. After all, I had become a stay-at-home wife at his insistence, and it was his obligation as a husband to provide for our family. Fulfilling my duties as a homemaker, I never faltered. With the termination of our apartment lease initiated by Leon, he found himself without a place to stay. Presently, he has resettled in the cramped condo where his parents reside, the three of them uncomfortably sharing the limited space. Leon's financial situation was dire. His meager salary coupled with his lavish spending on personal pursuits and gifts for his parents left him virtually penniless. Despite our previous circumstances, Leon had begun expressing a desire for a larger house. It seemed he concocted this plan after I mentioned to my parents my own aspirations of buying a home. Needless to say, his scheme failed spectacularly. To assume we would vacate quietly, even if it were a temporary residence, displayed a level of naivety that was almost laughable. It's disheartening to realize just how misguided my ex-husband could be. Now weary of caring for his parents in their cramped condo, Leon has persistently sought reconciliation. However, now that he is aware of my profession as a lawyer, I have chosen to ignore his advances. Currently, I am relishing the comforts of my new home alongside my parents. The idea of remarriage isn't particularly appealing to me at the moment. However, a fellow attorney whom I collaborated with during my divorce from Leon has expressed interest. I am considering adopting a more optimistic outlook, perhaps to grant my beloved parents the joy of meeting their grandchildren sooner.
There's no way a seat was reserved for you. The only people I invited were Dad and Mom. Got it. Did you really think you could just barge in and attend?
My brother Ryan's loud laughter echoed through the venue. That day, I had gone to my brother Ryan's wedding venue. However, my name wasn't on the guest list at the reception. As the receptionist tilted their head in confusion, my brother Ryan, dressed in his wedding attire, walked toward me with a smug grin on his face. And that's when he hit me with the words, "There's no seat for you." The guests around us glanced over with confused looks. I see. So in their eyes, I must have been the clueless idiot who showed up uninvited. Ryan had always called me names like useless and a failure, tormenting me for as long as I could remember. Ryan hadn't changed, even with age. He had gone as far as calling me to his wedding just to see the look on my face when he hurt me. But too bad for him. He was the one mistaken. I hadn't come to his wedding venue because I intended to attend. I went to the reception desk just to check if my name was on the guest list, just in case. Looking straight at Ryan, I opened my mouth to tell him the truth. "You're wrong. I didn't come here to attend your wedding. I was invited by that person. My name is Karen, and I'm 26 years old. I didn't grow up in what anyone would call a fortunate household, but I was probably the only one in the family who felt that way. My father, mother, and my older brother Ryan, who is 4 years older than me, must have lived happily together. To put it bluntly, their happiness was built at my expense. Or perhaps it would be more accurate to say that I was their personal punching bag. Since childhood, they had always been especially harsh toward me alone.
I hate it when people find out we're siblings. Do me a favor and just pretend we don't know each other, okay?
I don't even want to think about you being my child. How did I end up with such a worthless failure?
Being insulted like this wasn't just something my brother did. It was something my parents did too. It was an everyday occurrence. Why was I treated so horribly by my own family? According to my parents, the reason was simple. Unlike my brother, I was a useless nobody with no talent and a dull personality. It was true that Ryan had always excelled in both academics and sports. Ever since he was little, he scored at least 95 points on every test. In high school, where rankings were posted, he almost always placed in the top 10. His athletic ability was impressive, too. He was a regular on his team and carried his uniform and gear with him, walking confidently toward competition venues. I had seen that sight more times than I could count. With his talents and achievements, Ryan was always popular and constantly surrounded by people. Meanwhile, my grades were nothing special, just average. I wasn't athletic either. Whenever I ran a short distance race, I'd either finish last or barely above last place. I was also painfully shy, introverted to a fault, and had trouble making friends. At best, I could count the number of people I considered friends on my fingers. My social life was what you'd call narrow but deep. But to my parents, that just made me unfriendly.
You can't study or play sports like your brother, so at least try to be more cheerful.
Wipe that gloomy look off your face. That's why people don't want to be around you.
I had been scolded like this more times than I could count. If it had ended there, I might have believed they were just lecturing me out of concern for my future. But then they would continue, saying things like, well, no matter how hard you try, someone like you will never be liked. Seriously, how can siblings be this different? Their words made it painfully obvious they weren't trying to help me. They just enjoyed looking down on me. Joining in with my parents, Ryan would throw in his own insults, casually calling me such a gloomy freak. With each remark, the weight on my shoulders grew heavier, and I became afraid to lift my head in front of others, especially my family. The shadow cast by my bangs only made my face look even darker, which led to me being called unfriendly even more often. And so the vicious cycle continued. I had no real place in my own home, but thankfully, the few friends I had were genuinely kind people. Each of them gave me words that warmed my heart, like, I'm always on your side, Karen. Bit by bit, their support helped me find the strength to look forward. By the middle of my junior year of high school, the time had come when everyone around me started thinking about their future. That was when my best friend and I made a decision. We decided to leave our hometown and go to college in New York. Ryan, who had graduated from high school a little before me, had enrolled in a prestigious private university close enough to commute from home. My parents never hesitated to spend money on Ryan. They paid his entire tuition in full without requiring him to take out any student loans, and even told him, you don't need to get a part-time job. Meanwhile, when I had just entered high school, they made their stance crystal clear.
Once you graduate, we're not giving you a single cent for college. If you want to go, figure it out yourself. If you can't, then get a job. Not that I can imagine any company wanting to hire someone like you.
It was hard to believe those words were spoken to their own daughter. Anyone who heard this without context would probably tilt their head in confusion, wondering what kind of relationship we had. Even I sometimes found myself questioning, am I really their child? When my parents made that declaration, my patience finally snapped. That was the moment I decided. I would leave home no matter what. Even if I had to take out student loans, I would go to a university far away from my hometown. I will pass. I will escape that suffocating place, no matter what. Fueled by that determination, I threw myself into my studies. In the end, I succeeded. I was accepted into my dream university. Starting college and living on my own didn't mean I had reached my goal. If anything, this was just the beginning. The first thing I needed was money. To support myself, I started working part-time while balancing my studies, filling my days with constant business. In the mornings, I worked at a cafe before heading to college. After lectures, I went straight to my second job in a restaurant kitchen. To maximize my sleep, I squeezed in my studies during free periods. Whenever I ate lunch alone, I would multitask, staring at my laptop while eating something quick and easy with one hand, usually just a piece of bread.
Don't push yourself too hard. If you collapse, none of this will matter.
My best friend from high school told me this more than once. But for me, the feeling of liberation, being away from my family, far outweighed the exhaustion. That sense of freedom fueled me, keeping me going, and strangely, I never felt like I was struggling. Thanks for worrying about me, but I'm totally fine. I answered cheerfully, only to end up taking on even more shifts at work. Of course, my best friend scolded me for it again. At the time, I felt genuinely grateful, thinking, they really care about me that much. But looking back now, I can't help but feel a bit exasperated at myself. Maybe I shouldn't have worried people so much. Most of my days were spent going back and forth between work, college, and my apartment, rarely ever setting foot in my parents' house. But when it came to holidays like Christmas or Thanksgiving, avoiding them wasn't so easy. Despite how terribly they had treated me, they still had the nerve to send messages like, "You should come home once in a while." Had they finally realized how cruel they had been and reflected on their actions? I had to admit, I was naive to even think that way.
I just got a job at a major IT company. There's no way a failure like you could ever manage that.
The moment I stepped through the front door, my brother bombarded me with his bragging.
Ryan, you're amazing.
That's our son.
And as expected, my parents showered him with praise. Even as I pressed my lips together in silence, my brother kept smirking, his arrogant grin never fading as he continued talking.
My boss and colleagues trust me, and they've started giving me important tasks. Someone like you, though, even if you become a working adult, you'll probably only be allowed to do menial chores.
No, actually, Karen should be grateful to do the chores. That's all she's good for anyway.
At that moment, I understood. I hadn't been called back home so they could apologize for how they had treated me. That was never their intention. They just wanted to compare me to Ryan, who was living his so-called brilliant life, and use me as a punching bag once again. What an absolutely vile display of human nature. Without realizing it, my body tensed up, and I clenched my fists so tightly that my nails dug into my palms. I could feel a deep furrow forming between my brows. Were these people really full-grown adults? Why were they still acting so childishly, even now? Countless question marks flooded my mind, but I knew there was no point in voicing them to my parents or Ryan. Nothing would change. All I could do was keep my mouth shut and exhale slowly. I should avoid going back home as much as possible, even if they contact me again. With that decision, I gradually became estranged from my family. Work, studying, and the occasional break with my best friend. By keeping my schedule as packed as possible, I found myself thinking about my parents and Ryan less and less. Or rather, it would be more accurate to say that I simply didn't have the time to think about them anymore. Thanks to that, I was able to maintain my peace of mind. I never failed any courses, and in the end, I successfully graduated from college. I didn't return to my hometown for work. Instead, I got a job at a company in New York. The thought of going back home never even crossed my mind. Even if I didn't live with my parents, I knew all too well that they would go out of their way to find me, barge into my life, and hurl insults at me endlessly. I had no interest in willingly throwing myself back into hell. Back in college, my daily routine revolved around campus, my part-time jobs, and home. After entering the workforce, that routine shifted to just work and home. Years have passed since then, bringing me to where I am now. My parents and Ryan had drilled it into my head countless times, calling me useless, incapable, and insisting that even if I got a job, I'd only ever be stuck doing menial tasks. But contrary to their words, I had achieved significant results in my career. Of course, there have been plenty of challenges, but overall, I'm living a fulfilling and successful life. And then, out of nowhere, it happened. As I finished work and sat down for dinner, My smartphone vibrated on the table, signaling an incoming call. If it were my best friend, they would have sent a message first asking, "Can I call you now?" So, was it work-related? Tilting my head in curiosity, I glanced at the screen and immediately frowned. There was no mirror in front of me, but I was certain my face must have looked like I had just swallowed something unbearably bitter, my tongue going numb from the taste. "I really don't want to answer this." The words slipped out unconsciously. The caller was none other than Ryan. I scrolled through my call history, and his name was buried so far down that I had to swipe multiple times just to find the last time we had spoken. It had been that long since we'd had any real contact. What could he possibly want now? The phone kept vibrating insistently, as if demanding me to pick up, fueling my anxiety. But my body felt as heavy as lead, and I couldn't even bring myself to lift a finger to tap the screen. Before I could do anything, the call ended. But barely a moment later, the phone started vibrating again. If I didn't answer now, it would only make things more troublesome later. I could already picture the kinds of things Ryan would say. "Why didn't you pick up right away? Do you really think someone like you has the right to waste my time?" There's no way around this. I'll just answer. I let out a deep sigh as I slowly reached for my phone and pressed the answer button. "Hello?"
Oh, finally. Took you long enough. Seriously, when I call, you should pick up right away. Not that I actually want to contact you, but I've got something to report. So I'm doing you a favor by calling.
Even though I had answered on the second call, this was the attitude I got. I felt the urge to sigh again, but I knew that would only make things more troublesome. Swallowing my frustration, I held back and simply asked, "What's the report?" Ryan let out a smug chuckle, his voice filled with excitement as he spoke.
Guess what? I'm getting married, and we're having a lavish wedding overseas.
Next, he told me the date and venue of the wedding. It was an extravagant location, one I had seen featured on TV before. A high-profile venue, no doubt. No matter how terribly he had treated me in the past, I wasn't the kind of person who would refuse to offer a single word of congratulations upon hearing someone was getting married. So, I see. Congratulations. I couldn't exactly be thrilled for him, but if I sounded too indifferent, he'd probably start whining with something like, "Do you really mean that?" Anticipating that, I softened my tone as I spoke. Maybe that pleased him, because without me even asking, Ryan started rambling about his partner.
Unlike you, she's really cute, and her smile is amazing. And the best part, she gets along great with Dad and Mom. Honestly, way more than you ever did. She already feels like real family.
The constant comparisons between me and his partner. There was no way I was imagining how deliberately emphasized they were. Even in a moment like this, did he really still feel the need to put me down? As I sighed in exasperation, Ryan suddenly asked, "So, are you coming to the wedding?" I let out a small, wry chuckle before responding with a question of my own about travel expenses. I expected him to snap back with something like, "Just answer the question." But instead, he casually said, I'm really busy with all the preparations right now. Sorry, but just book your own flight and cover the cost yourself." And with that, he ended the call with a quick, "later." Hearing Ryan say the words "sorry," but was almost shocking. He did start the conversation by throwing insults at me as usual. But could it be that marriage had made him develop at least a tiny shred of human decency? I wish I could go back and grab my past self by the shoulders, shake her hard, and shout, "How could you even think that?" Ryan's mindset had been set in stone for years. There was no way a mere wedding could change him so easily. The day of Ryan's wedding arrived, and I went to the reception desk, only to find that my name wasn't on the guest list. As the receptionist tilted their head in confusion, Ryan, already dressed in his wedding attire, approached me with a smirk, the corners of his mouth curling upward. I said nothing, simply locking eyes with him, staring straight ahead. And yet, he still had the audacity to say this.
Oh, come on. There's no way a seat was reserved for you. The only people I invited were Dad and Mom. Got it. Besides, I never even sent you an invitation. Did you really think you could just show up and attend?
Ryan's loud laughter echoed through the venue. Guests around us cast confused glances in my direction. I see. So in their eyes, I must be nothing more than the clueless fool who showed up uninvited. The question Ryan asked over the phone, "Are you coming to the wedding?" was never about preparing a seat for me. He had called me to this so-called joyous occasion for one reason only, to see the look on my face when he hurt me. But too bad for him. I hadn't come to Ryan's wedding to attend. I went to the reception desk simply to check, just in case, whether my name was on the guest list. No, you're wrong. I didn't come here to attend this wedding. I was invited by that person.
This wedding? And who the hell is that person?
Ryan tilted his head in confusion, clearly not understanding. With a calm expression, I pointed behind him and said, "The wedding I'm attending is over there." Ryan furrowed his brows but still turned in the direction I pointed. His eyes widened in surprise as he took in the sight before him.
What? Someone else is getting married today besides us.
His voice was filled with disbelief. What he saw was the largest hall in the entire venue, a space far grander than the one his wedding was being held in. That was where the wedding I was attending was taking place. Ryan had probably expected to mock me and make me feel miserable, but he was completely off the mark. However, he clearly didn't want to admit it. Hold on, don't make up stupid lies. You're just saying that out of desperation, right? Trying to save face so you don't embarrass yourself? He rattled off excuse after excuse, clinging to the idea that I was bluffing. Ryan still didn't realize it. The one who was about to be embarrassed wasn't me. It was him. Just as I shook my head and said, "I'm not lying," a voice called out to me, "Karen." Both Ryan and I turned in that direction. From the entrance of the hall I had pointed to earlier, my best friend came hurrying toward me, her footsteps light and quick. That's right. The wedding being held here was my best friend's. Even if Ryan had actually invited me to his wedding, I had never intended to attend. The person who had tormented me for years, and the person who had always listened to me, supported me, and even made the decision to move to New York with me. There was no question about who I would prioritize. She must have heard the entire exchange between Ryan and me, because the moment she stood beside me, she shot him a sharp glare, as if to say, "See? She told you it wasn't a lie."
You're absolutely pathetic. What's so fun about acting this childish? On what's supposed to be one of the happiest days of your life, you're wasting your time plotting petty harassment. Doesn't that just make you feel empty inside?
My best friend's voice was clear and resolute. It wasn't particularly loud, yet it rang through the space with unmistakable sharpness, drawing the attention of the surrounding guests. Seeing her stand up for me so fiercely, even in this situation, sent a warm surge through my chest. Thank you for always being on my side. I silently expressed my gratitude to her in my heart. But Ryan stood there with his eyes and mouth wide open, looking as if his soul had left his body. It was clear that my best friend's words hadn't reached him at all. It seemed to have gone in one ear and out the other. Though he seemed to be looking in her direction, his gaze was actually fixed on someone standing a little farther away. His body trembled slightly, despite the absence of any cold, and his lips had gone completely pale. His face was a mix of shock and fear. Who was standing there? With each sharp click of approaching footsteps, Ryan's complexion grew paler and paler.
Why?
The words slipped weakly from his lips. His sentence trailed off, but it was obvious what he meant to say. Why are you here? The person seemed to pick up on Ryan's unspoken words. Stepping beside my best friend, he looked directly at Ryan and spoke.
How could a wedding proceed without the groom? Am her partner. Of course, I should be here at the venue.
That's right. The person who had arrived with my best friend was none other than her fiancé. But why was Ryan reacting so intensely to this man's presence? Because he was none other than the sales director of Ryan's business client.
I never imagined you and Karen were siblings. It's quite a small world, isn't it? My wife's best friend and my business associates turn out to be family.
His tone was calm and polite, but even that seemed to send a wave of fear through Ryan. His trembling grew visibly worse. If this were an anime, there would probably be visible after images of Ryan shaking. His teeth had begun to chatter, producing a faint but continuous clicking sound. As for the main matter at hand, the sales director began, and at those words, Ryan flinched so dramatically it was almost comical. His voice, which had been calm just moments ago, had now dropped, low, firm, and commanding.
I had heard about it before, but after witnessing what just happened, I can now say with certainty, you and your parents have been mistreating your own sister, Karen, for years.
Wait, no, that's not.
Ryan stammered, his eyes darting around frantically as if searching for an escape, his words barely coherent. He probably wanted to make excuses, but knowing that his own words had been overheard, he must have realized there was no way out. And just as if to deal the final blow, the sales director spoke in a calm, matter-of-fact tone.
We will need to reconsider our contract with your company.
What?
Ryan's voice was so loud and shrill from shock that it nearly cracked, but beneath it, I too let out a small, surprised, "What?" as I tilted my head in confusion. The company name the sales director had just mentioned wasn't the one Ryan or my parents had told me before. I later found out the truth. Ryan had been lying about working at a major IT firm. In reality, he was employed by one of its subcontractors. Having been spoiled and placed on a pedestal by our parents his whole life, Ryan had grown into a prideful, image-conscious person. Maybe that's why he had casually thrown around the name of a prestigious company. Once he received praise, "That's amazing," as expected of you, he probably found himself trapped, unable to backtrack. So he kept up the lie, hiding the truth all the way up to this day. The pride Ryan had spent years carefully building crumbled in an instant with the sales director's words. He bit his lower lip in frustration, unable to hide his humiliation. The sales director calmly began explaining that this decision wasn't based on just this incident alone. He went on to say that Ryan often made decisions based purely on his own judgment, rarely conducting proper market research. As a result, the company's profit margins had been steadily declining year after year, putting him in a position where losing the contract was only a matter of time. And now, with this incident, the final nail had been hammered in.
A person who can't even value their own family, the people closest to them, could never truly consider the needs of their business partners. I have no interest in working with someone who can so easily hurl insults without a second thought. We will be terminating our contract.
Hit by the sharp words of the sales director, Ryan staggered, his legs giving out beneath him as he collapsed to his knees, completely disregarding the fact that he was still in his wedding attire. For a moment, I thought he had finally realized his mistakes and was about to show some remorse. But then,
No, you've got it all wrong. Karen's name not being on the guest list was just a mistake. She was actually invited.
unbelievable. Ryan had resorted to pathetic excuses. But there was no way any of us were going to believe him. I'm beyond disappointed in you. I don't even want to consider you my brother anymore. Stay out of my life, forever. I declared my final goodbye to Ryan and, without waiting for his reaction, took my best friend's hand and walked away without looking back. Inside the venue, the air was warm and filled with joy, every detail thoughtfully arranged. My breath caught as I saw my best friend in her wedding dress. She was so beautiful, I nearly teared up. Beside her, the sales director gazed at her with eyes full of love and tenderness. There was no doubt about it. They were perfect for each other. And I was certain they would share a lifetime of happiness together. I had pushed all thoughts of Ryan out of my mind and fully enjoyed the wedding. Even after returning home, I let myself bask in the lingering joy of that beautiful day. Then, exactly 1 week after returning from the trip, my phone vibrated in my hand, flashing Ryan's name on the screen, announcing an incoming call. For some reason, the vibration felt louder than usual, almost as if it reflected the instability of the person on the other end of the call. My body stiffened instantly. Just when my best friend's wedding had started to soften the painful memories, he has to come and ruin it. I felt my cheek twitch in frustration. Completely unaware of my thoughts, I answered the call with a simple, "Hello?" The next moment, Ryan's furious voice exploded through the phone, shouting at me with overwhelming rage.
Are you kidding me? You ruined my life.
What? Back when he called me before the wedding, I had carefully chosen my words to avoid provoking him. But now that I had cut ties with him, it didn't matter to me in the slightest how furious he was. When I responded with an exasperated tone, Ryan raised his voice even louder and began ranting about everything that had happened in the short time since the wedding. Apparently, he had also lied to his partner, telling her that he worked for a major IT company. Encouraged by compliments like, "That's amazing," and "so cool," Ryan had let the praise go to his head. Determined not to let the truth come out, he had been constantly putting on an act around his partner, carefully maintaining the illusion of success in his daily life. On dates, he feared hearing, "A high-income earner like you can't even afford this?" So, to keep up the act, he frequently took her to expensive restaurants and covered the entire bill himself. To avoid suspicion based on his appearance, he made sure to wear only high-end brand clothing whenever he was with her. He had been depleting his savings, but with such an unsustainable lifestyle, his funds had started running out. Keeping up this act would only make things harder for him. Someday, he would have to come clean. That thought lingered in the back of his mind, but his overwhelming pride wouldn't let him admit it. And so, despite continuing to hide the truth, he went through with the marriage. But then, a new problem came crashing down on him. That problem was the wedding. His wife had always expressed her desire for a destination wedding, frequently mentioning how she wanted to have the ceremony abroad. She even sent Ryan photos of her ideal venues, making it clear through her messages that a domestic wedding was never an option in her mind. Instead of admitting the truth about his depleted savings, Ryan chose to take out loans just to cover the costs and push forward with the wedding. Was it because his love for his wife was that strong? Or was it simply his obsession with maintaining appearances? Well, it was probably a bit of both. But on the day of the wedding, something completely unexpected happened. That unexpected event was none other than the wedding of my best friend and the sales director, taking place at a different venue on the very same day. Ryan had mocked me, only to have that very moment witnessed by the sales director of a major business client, leading to the contract being terminated. Then, word of the incident quickly spread among the company executives attending his wedding. As a result, he was held accountable and was promptly fired. It was the perfect example of the phrase, "When it rains, it pours." Everything had spiraled into a complete disaster for him. But Ryan's misfortunes didn't end there. They say, birds of a feather flock together, and Ryan's wife was just as obsessed with appearances as he was. She had invited a large number of friends to the wedding, which meant the costs for travel and accommodations had skyrocketed. She wasn't contributing to the expenses at all. Ryan was covering everything. She didn't have much money herself and had completely relied on her high-earning, big company employee husband for financial support. What would happen when she learned the truth and witnessed Ryan being fired right in front of her? With all his lies exposed, Ryan was dealt the final blow. "I can't be with you anymore." His wife declared their divorce on the spot. She was probably only ever attracted to Ryan's fake status and supposed wealth. Though, there's also a chance that she truly did love him at some point. But the overwhelming shock of all his lies shattered any feelings she had left. Either way, it was over.
Why the hell is this happening to me? I lost my money, I got dumped. This makes no sense. This is all your fault.
Ryan's furious shouting rattled my eardrums. Even after listening to everything he said, I still couldn't understand how he had come to the conclusion that this was my fault. Everything that had happened was simply the result of his own actions. He had brought this upon himself. If he had swallowed his pride and been honest about where he worked, he might never have needed to take on debt. If he hadn't treated me so cruelly in the first place, he wouldn't have lost his contracts, been fired as a consequence, or ended up getting divorced. Ryan had completely lost control, relentlessly screaming, "This is all your fault," over and over again. His refusal to take responsibility was beyond absurd. It was downright pathetic. This was beyond unreasonable. I opened my mouth, intending to calmly refute him. But before I could get a word in, he cut me off.
I'm gonna make you take responsibility for this. I'm coming to your place right now, so you better stay put.
What? Why on earth should I have to clean up his mess? And how did he even come to the conclusion that barging into my home was the solution? Confused, I let out a baffled sound, but Ryan seemed to misinterpret it as fear. Finding amusement in the idea that I was scared, he let out a low chuckle before speaking again.
You can try to run, but it's useless. I'm already right outside your place.
You've got to be kidding me, I muttered, furrowing my brows, and quietly made my way to the front door, careful not to make a sound. The moment I peeked through the door's peephole, a loud bang, bang, bang echoed through the phone. I didn't even need to see it. I could picture him pounding his fists against the door. But the room I was in remained completely silent. There were no dull thuds echoing through the walls, no vibrations shaking the door or the floor beneath me. "Hey, are you by any chance at the apartment I lived in back when I was in college?" At my question, Ryan suddenly went silent, as if he had frozen in shock. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then, he was the first to break the silence.
Wait, so you're not living here anymore?
As if the rage that had been fueling him suddenly drained away, Ryan's furious shouting came to an abrupt halt. His voice shrank to a barely audible murmur, muttering in disbelief, "That can't be." Then where? It sounded less like he was speaking to me and more like he was talking to himself, dazed and lost. His anger had clouded his judgment so much that he hadn't even considered the obvious, that I might have moved after becoming a working adult. He had stormed over to the apartment, determined to make me pay, only to discover that I no longer lived there. Completely caught off guard, his confidence deflated in an instant, and his tone grew noticeably weaker. I could easily picture him, like a puppet with its strings cut, slumping forward in utter defeat. If I kept the call going, Ryan would undoubtedly ask, "Then where are you now?" Before that could happen, I moved to press the end call button. But just as my finger touched the screen, a loud, angry voice, not Ryan's, blared through the phone.
Hey, stop banging on my damn door. Don't you get that you're disturbing the whole neighborhood?
It seemed the new tenant of my old apartment had finally lost patience and come outside. "You're being way too damn loud," the tenant complained, completely justified in his frustration. Ryan seemed to have completely lost the will to form a coherent response. He just kept mumbling meaningless fragments. Well, I mean, over and over again. Now's my chance to end this. Without hesitation, I pressed the red end call button and, in one seamless motion, blocked Ryan's number. Later, I heard that he had been taken to the police station, thoroughly interrogated, and eventually released. Whether it was because he had genuinely reflected after being lectured by multiple people, or simply out of fear of getting in trouble with the police again, I didn't know. But one thing was certain, Ryan never tried to come after me again. And so, Ryan's new life began, one burdened with massive debt. But instead of letting him face the consequences of his own actions, my parents, completely oblivious to the concept of accountability, reached out to me with a request. "Please help your brother." Coddling him now wouldn't do him any good. It would only make things worse. Letting out a deep sigh, I flatly rejected their request without a second thought. I've already cut ties with Ryan, so I have no obligation to help him. And as for you two, I never want to have anything to do with you again. And so, I was finally freed from the chains of my family, able to live my life on my own terms. If I ever have a family of my own in the future, I will use my brother and parents as examples of what not to be and create a home filled with warmth and love. I'm getting married to him, so I'm cutting ties with you.
Mom, who had left me in a foster home ever since Dad passed away, showed up after a long time. But she said to me, folding her arms with a man I didn't know. I was too shocked to say anything, but Mom didn't care. She kept talking happily. The man next to her was the son of the CEO of a big company and was set to take over as the next CEO. They wanted to get married, but apparently, his parents would be furious if Mom had a child. I didn't understand why having a child would make them mad, but Mom made it clear, "You're in the way."
Anyway, so don't think of me as your mom anymore.
After saying just that, Mom left with the man. I was abandoned by my own mother. The moment I realized it, tears started pouring from my eyes, and I cried until I couldn't make a sound anymore. After that, my uncle and his wife took me in, and eventually, I started calling them Kyle and Sophia. One day, while the three of us were living happily, someone started ringing the doorbell over and over. Sophia stood up, looking puzzled. Who could that be? The moment she looked at the monitor, her face stiffened, and she called Kyle.
Ani, you should come here.
When Kyle saw the monitor, his smile disappeared, and he hurried to the front door. Sophia told me, "It's okay," trying to reassure me, but I couldn't shake off the unease. Then, I heard Kyle arguing with someone at the entrance, and suddenly, a woman barged into the living room.
Anna.
It was my mom, the very woman who had abandoned me to get married.
Don't just barge in here.
Kyle grabbed Mom's shoulder and yelled, but she brushed his hand off. Then she walked up to me, crouched down, and held my hands tightly.
I've missed you, Anna. Let's live together again.
The way she acted was so different from before that I felt nothing but disgust. I could feel goosebumps all over my body. I didn't want to talk to this woman anymore. Looking down at Mom, who was smiling like nothing had happened, I spoke clearly. I don't have a mom. My name is Anna Evans, and I'm a first grader. In September, I started going to the elementary school near my home, and now I walk there every day with my backpack. At first, I was a little nervous about school, but now I've gotten used to it and made lots of friends. Everyone says being at home is more fun than school, but I actually like playing with my friends at school better. Because when I go home, no one is there. Dad comes home after work, but Mom is usually not around, even at night. So, I was always alone until Dad came home. When I was little, I thought Mom was working too, but lately, I realized she wasn't working. She was just out having fun.
I'm home, Anna. Sorry I'm late.
Daddy. As usual, Mom wasn't home that day either, and I had been waiting for Dad while drawing by myself. He must have rushed home because he was sweating all over.
You must be hungry. I'll make dinner right away.
I'll help.
Oh, really? Thanks, that would be a big help.
At my friends' houses, it's usually their moms who cook. But in my house, Dad is always the one who makes dinner. Sometimes Mom prepares food, but all she does is put out store-bought meals. So I've never had her homemade cooking. But Dad's cooking is delicious, so I don't really mind. Besides, I enjoy making dinner with Dad. That night, as usual, Dad and I cooked together, chatted a lot, and had fun eating dinner. Afterward, he gave me a bath and stayed with me until I fell asleep. But Mom didn't come home before I went to bed. Even after that, Mom hardly ever came home, and when she did, she just slept and never talked to me. A while ago, I used to miss her so much that I cried and begged, "Come home early." But every time, she just looked annoyed and said, "You're so noisy." So, I stopped liking Mom. As long as I had kind Dad with me, that was enough. But then, I couldn't even stay with a dad I loved so much. Dad got seriously sick and had to be hospitalized.
Anna, I'm sorry. I got sick.
Lying in his hospital bed, Dad squeezed my hands tightly. I wanted to tell him, it's okay, but if I tried to speak, I knew I'd start crying, so I couldn't say anything. He gently stroked my head. The doctors told me his illness was called terminal cancer. I didn't understand what that meant, but they said it was really hard to cure. I prayed to God, hoping Dad would get better soon. While I was praying, Mom, who had been talking to the doctors, suddenly came back.
Terminal cancer. What a hassle.
She said, looking extremely annoyed. Even though we hadn't seen each other in so long, she wouldn't even look at me. And even though Dad was sick, she didn't seem worried at all. When I pouted, Mom glared at me with a sharp look.
What?
Nothing.
Don't lie to me. You've got that complaining face. You're just as unlikable as ever.
Hearing her insult me, I bit my lip tightly. If I didn't, I felt like I would start crying any second. Dad looked at me with a worried look and begged my mom on the bed.
Amelia, forget about me. Just make sure you take care of Anna. Please.
Mom's face twisted in irritation.
Are you saying I'm not even capable of taking care of my child? Don't be ridiculous.
She then grabbed my hand and yanked me forward. Ouch! I cried out, but she didn't loosen her grip.
Come on, we're going.
Okay. I glanced at Dad, and he gave me a small nod. He was probably telling me to listen to Mom. Even though I didn't want to, I nodded back at Dad and quietly left the hospital with Mom. For the next few days, Mom actually took care of me. She still only bought meals instead of cooking, and she wasn't as good at keeping things tidy as Dad, but it was the first time she had stayed home this much. At first, I felt uneasy about living alone with Mom, but little by little, I got used to it. Maybe I could manage like this until Dad got better. Just when I had started thinking that, I realized that Mom hadn't changed at all. I figured it out about a week after Dad was hospitalized.
Mom hasn't come home.
Dad's eyes widened in shock when he heard me say that. At first, after Dad was hospitalized, Mom stayed home for a few days. But then, she started disappearing again. She had left before, but this was the first time she had been gone for so many days in a row.
So you've been home all alone this whole time?
When I nodded, Dad's face darkened like I had never seen before. That woman, he muttered angrily.
Anna, I'm so sorry you had to go through that. I need to figure something out. For now, could you take this and buy yourself some food?
Saying that, he handed me some money. Of course, I could go shopping by myself, but what I really wanted was to stay here. I didn't want to leave Dad. But I knew if I said that, it would only trouble him, So I took the money and nodded again. Dad must have realized I was forcing myself because he gave me a small, sad smile. The next day, when I went to the hospital, there was a woman standing beside Dad's bed whom I didn't recognize. When she saw me, she smiled warmly.
Hello, Anna.
Hello. I greeted her back but tilted my head, wondering who she was. Then Dad introduced her.
Anna, this is the director of a foster home. She's here to take you in.
A foster home?
A foster home is a place where kids who don't have parents live together. You'll be staying there with other children from now on.
Hearing that, my heart started pounding. I panicked and clung tightly to Dad's arm, desperately trying to show him that I didn't want to go. But I have you, Dad. Why do I have to go there? Mom's not here right now, but she'll come home someday.
She's not coming back.
His voice was a little firmer than usual, and I flinched. Then, he pulled me into a tight hug and spoke in a voice that sounded like he was about to cry.
I'm really sorry, Anna. I'm sick, so I can't take care of you. I can't rely on my parents, and my brother is overseas. There's no one else who can take care of you.
Dad's parents had already passed away before I was born. Mom's parents were still alive, but she wasn't on good terms with them, so I had never met them. Dad's younger brother was just as kind as him, but he lived overseas for work. So, just like Dad said, there was no other choice but for me to go to a foster home. I cried into Dad's chest for a long time, but eventually, I forced myself to stop and looked up. He gazed at me with a worried expression. Okay, I'll go to the foster home.
Thank you, Anna.
Dad hugged me tightly again, whispering, "I'm sorry," over and over. Then, he turned to the woman behind me and said, "Please take care of her." After that, I packed my things with the help of the people from the foster home and left the house I had lived in all my life. I thought I would be able to go home as soon as Dad got out of the hospital, but that wish never came true. Dad never left the hospital and became a star in the sky.
Well, I'm leaving now, so you better get back to the foster home.
After Dad's funeral, Mom coldly said those words and turned her back on me. Apparently, the hospital had contacted her, and she only came back because she had no choice but to handle his funeral. I kept crying when I saw Dad, who was only a bone, but Mom didn't seem to care at all. Losing Dad was heartbreaking, but the way Mom acted made it hurt even more. After the funeral, Mom left again, and I returned to the foster home. At first, I hated this new life and cried all the time, but the people there were kind, and I became close with the other kids. It felt like maybe I could manage, even without Mom. When I was thinking like that, Mom, who had never cared about me before, suddenly came to visit.
It's been a while, Anna.
She smiled as she spoke, standing next to a man I had never seen before. The man had a grumpy expression, which immediately made me feel uneasy. But Mom seemed to be in a great mood. She smiled and folded her arms with the man and said to me,
I'm getting married to him. So, I'm cutting ties with you.
Hearing that out of nowhere, I was too shocked to say anything. Mom didn't care and just kept talking happily. Apparently, the man was the son of a CEO of a major company and would be taking over as CEO soon. They wanted to get married, but his parents wouldn't approve if she had a child. I didn't understand why having a child would make them mad, but Mom said it clearly, "You're in the way."
Anyway, so don't think of me as your mother anymore.
After saying that, Mom left with the man. I stood there in a daze for a while, trying to process what had just happened. She abandoned me. I never really liked Mom, but deep down, I had still hoped that someday she would come back for me.
Anna, what's wrong?
Alice, the director, came running toward me, looking worried. I realized that I was crying. As she held me tightly, I cried uncontrollably until I couldn't make a sound anymore.
Anna, you have a visitor.
Sometime after Mom abandoned me, someone else came to see me. I still couldn't forget what happened last time, so just hearing the word visitor made me feel uneasy, but I couldn't just refuse to see them. Reluctantly, I followed Alice to the reception room.
Anna.
The person inside immediately stood up, looking overjoyed. I knew that face very well. Uncle.
I'm so sorry I couldn't be there for you during such a hard time.
My Uncle Kyle, who looked just like Dad, spoke softly as he wrapped me in a gentle hug. It felt like being held by Dad, and my heart warmed up.
Do you remember? This is my wife, your Aunt Sophia.
Anna, it's been a long time. I only met you when you were little, so I wouldn't be surprised if you don't remember me.
I did vaguely remember her. Being called Aunt out of the blue felt a little strange, but her kind and cheerful smile made me feel at ease.
We finally moved back to the US and we want to become your parents and live together. What do you think?
I was surprised and asked, like, adoption?
That's right. You know about that.
I didn't fully understand, but I had heard the word adoption often here. I knew that when someone was adopted, they got new parents. Uncle and Aunt Sophia wanted to adopt me and become my new family. I hesitated for a moment. But I liked Uncle, and Aunt seemed like a really nice person. So, I made my decision and nodded firmly. Both Uncle and Aunt looked relieved and smiled. That same day, they took me home with them. Life with them was even more peaceful and fun than I had imagined. They were so kind and affectionate toward me. At first, I was a bit shy, but before long, I started calling them Kyle and Sophia. Since Sophia didn't work, she was always there to greet me with a smile when I came home from school. The first time she said, "Welcome home," I was so happy that I almost cried. Sophia would spend time with me every day, making cakes and playing in the park, doing all the things Mom hadn't done before. This is what a real mother is like. With that thought, I started living my days happily. 2 years passed since I moved in with them, and I was now in 3rd grade. That Sunday, we were sitting together as a family, enjoying our afternoon snack. As we laughed and chatted together, the doorbell rang. Sophia stood up murmuring, "Who could that be?" But the doorbell kept ringing persistently. The moment she looked at the monitor, her face twisted in displeasure, and she called Kyle.
Honey, come here for a second.
Kyle glanced at the monitor, and his smile instantly disappeared. He hurried toward the front door. Sophia tried to reassure me, saying, "It's okay," but I couldn't shake off the unease. Then, from the entrance, I heard Kyle arguing with someone. Suddenly, a woman burst into the living room.
Anna.
It was Mom, the woman who had abandoned me to get married. I had almost forgotten about her, and the shock nearly made me choke on my snack.
Don't just barge in here.
Kyle grabbed Mom's shoulder and shouted, but she ignored him and shook his hand off. Then she came toward me, knelt down, and wrapped my hands tightly in hers.
I've missed you, Anna. Let's live together again.
The way she was acting was completely different from before, and it made me feel sick. I could feel goosebumps all over my body. I didn't want to talk to this woman anymore. Looking down at Mom, who was smiling like nothing had happened, I spoke clearly. "I don't have a mom." Mom's smile instantly vanished. Kyle stepped between us and pulled me away from her.
You suddenly show up, and now you say this. What are you even talking about?
That's right. Anna is our daughter now.
When Kyle and Sophia raised their voices in anger, Mom stood up and glared at them.
Anna is my girl. You had no right to take her from the foster home. Don't act so high and mighty.
You abandoned her, and now you act like a mother?
Mom suddenly looked sad and teary-eyed. She wiped away a tear and started talking about herself.
I wasn't thinking straight back then. After my boyfriend dumped me, I ended up broke. And that's when I finally realized that I have no one but Anna.
I had assumed Mom married that man after abandoning me, but apparently they broke up quickly. His parents had investigated Mom and found out that she had left me in a foster home and never did any housework. Kyle let out a sigh and said in a disbelieving tone,
So basically, his parents found out about your terrible behavior, refused to approve the marriage, and you got dumped. That's entirely your fault.
It's his parents who are crazy. Just because I put my child in a foster home, they got mad. Because of that, he lost his place as heir. And then he blamed me and broke up with me. What did I do wrong?
I didn't want to hear her yelling anymore, so I covered my ears. Noticing this, Sophia pulled me into her arms, holding my head against her chest. Even so, I could still hear Mom's voice.
I lost him. I lost my money. And now my debt is piling up. I have no choice but to live with Anna.
She said she wanted to live with me, but she didn't look happy about it at all. In fact, she looked even angrier than usual. Did she really want to live with me? As I thought about that, Kyle muttered in a low voice.
Could it be? You're after money.
What are you talking about?
Don't play dumb. You want to take Anna back so you can get survivor's benefits and child support payments, don't you?
Mom crossed her arms and scoffed.
So what if I do? Just give me Anna, and everything will be fine.
Like hell we will.
Kyle's furious voice startled me so much that I jumped. Sophia gently rubbed my back to calm me down.
What do you even see Anna as?
Shut up. She's my child. I can do whatever I want with her.
Oh, really? And yet you were the one who abandoned her in a foster home. And we'll never forgive you for not letting us know about my brother's funeral.
Hearing that, I suddenly realized why Kyle and Sophia weren't there. Back then, I was too heartbroken to think about it, but now it made sense. They came back to see Dad, but before they did, Mom had the funeral.
Not to mention, you cut all ties with Anna and left her at the foster home. That's not something a real parent would do.
We heard about what happened and decided to legally adopt Anna. It took us a little time to move back here, but now she's our daughter. Stay out of her life.
Anna is my daughter. Just hand her over now.
Kyle was about to yell something back, but he stopped when he saw me step forward toward Mom. He looked at me with worry, unsure of what I was going to do. Mom, on the other hand, spread her arms wide with a triumphant smile.
See? You still want your real mom, don't you? Come on, Anna. Let's go home together.
Where? My home is here.
What did you say?
Mom glared at me with her usual irritated expression, but I wasn't scared anymore. Because I had Kyle and Sophia, who truly cared about me. I didn't want Kyle and Sophia to be hurt any more than they already had been, so I decided to tell Mom clearly. My parents are these two right here. You gave birth to me, but I don't see you as my mom anymore.
You? How dare you say that to your own mother?
You were the one who told me not to think of you as my mom first.
That was.
For a moment, I thought maybe she had forgotten what she said to me, but it seemed like she actually remembered. She remembered, but was now trying to pretend it never happened. That made me hate her even more than before. No matter how kind Kyle and Sophia had been, the memory of that day still hurt. And yet, Mom never even apologized. There was no way I would ever want to live with someone like that. And I don't want to live with you, so don't ever come back here again.
You little.
Mom's face turned red, and she opened her mouth to yell, but Kyle stepped in front of me protectively.
That's the end of it. Please leave.
Don't be ridiculous, you kidnapper. If you don't give Anna back, I'll call the police.
Go ahead. In fact, if you keep causing trouble, I'll be the one calling them first. Are you okay with that?
Mom clenched her teeth in frustration, then spat out, "You'll regret this," before storming off. As soon as she was gone, I let out a deep breath. My heart was pounding like crazy. Kyle and Sophia leaned in, looking worried.
Are you okay? That must have been scary.
I'm sorry for yelling like that.
I quickly shook my head and smiled at them to reassure them. I was surprised, but I'm okay, because you two, who I love, protected me. Hearing that, they looked at each other before hugging me tightly at the same time. I struggled as I started to feel squeezed, and they quickly let go.
Oh, sorry. That was too tight.
I couldn't help it, but you're just too cute.
I noticed that they were crying when I looked up at them after they let go. Why are you crying?
No, I'm not crying.
Sophia quickly wiped her tears and forced a smile. But Kyle was bawling. His face was soaked with tears.
Hey, Kyle, you're making Anna worry.
But she said she loves us. That made me so happy.
I had never seen Kyle cry like this before, and I had no idea what to say. So, I patted Kyle's head like they always do to me. That just made him cry even harder, and now I was the one feeling helpless.
Just let him cry it out. He will stop eventually.
Really? Sophia sighed and chuckled as she watched Kyle sobbing uncontrollably. At first, I had been worried, but seeing Kyle cry like that started to seem funny. Before I knew it, I was laughing along with Sophia. A week had passed since Mom suddenly showed up. Since then, our family had grown even closer, and every day was filled with happiness. School was tough, especially the studying part, but I didn't mind going because I got to play with my friends. That day, after spending the whole day at school, I packed up my things and got ready to head home. I usually walked home with my best friend, but she was absent that day, so I was on my own. As I stepped out of the school gate and onto my usual path, I noticed a car parked a little way ahead. Cars were always parked along the street, so I didn't think much of it and started to walk past it. But a car door suddenly swung open, and two adults stepped out. I stopped in my tracks when I recognized one of them. Mom?
Anna, I came to pick you up. Come on, let's go.
She was smiling, but it was the kind of smile that bullies had when they were about to do something mean. She reached out toward me. I took a step back, fear creeping into my chest. Mom's smile instantly disappeared, and she clicked her tongue in irritation.
You're such a hassle. Just get in the car.
No. I shook my head desperately, trying to back away. Then Mom's eyes went cold. She turned to the man beside her, the one who had also stepped out of the car.
Enough of this. Put her in the car.
I tried to run, but I was too slow. The man grabbed me easily and started dragging me toward the car. Stop! Let me go, help!
Shut up. Stay quiet.
I screamed as loud as I could while struggling, and Mom, looking flustered, quickly covered my mouth. It was hard to breathe, and I thrashed even harder. But no matter how much I resisted, I couldn't break free, and Mom dragged me into the car, keeping her hand tightly over my mouth. Just as the man outside was about to shut the car door, a loud voice rang out.
What the hell are you doing?
Whoa.
There was the sound of a struggle, followed by a commotion outside. Then, suddenly, a familiar face peeked into the car.
Anna, are you okay?
Mr. Davis. It was my teacher. He wasn't my homeroom teacher, but he always talked to students from different classes, and often played with us during recess. The moment I saw his face, tears poured down my cheeks. I shoved a stunned Mom aside and bolted out of the car, crying. Mr. Davis, help me.
It's okay now. You're safe.
He hugged me and gently patted my head. Once I calmed down a little and stepped back, I saw another teacher pinning the man down.
We got a call from a neighbor about a suspicious car parking around, so we were patrolling near the school. Thank God we weren't too late.
Hearing his words, I started to think that maybe Mom had been targeting me all along. She had been lurking around the school, waiting for the moment I was alone.
We just called the police, so stay put until they arrive.
Mr. Davis turned to Mom, who was still sitting in the car. Her face had gone pale, but she glared at him with defiance. A few minutes later, the police car arrived, and several officers stepped out.
Are you the one who called this in?
Yes, I'm a teacher at this elementary school. I saw one of my students being forced into a car, so I called the police.
The officer nodded and then turned to Mom. Please step out of the vehicle. The man had already been handed over to the other officers and was now sitting in the patrol car. It looked like they were questioning him there. Mom hesitated but eventually got out, pursing her lips in frustration. Then, with her hands on her hips, she spoke confidently.
I'm her mother. I was just taking her shopping after school. What's so wrong about a mother putting her daughter in her own car?
And who is that man?
My friend. He was just going to come with us on our little outing.
One of the officers then crouched down in front of me.
Is what she's saying true?
I peeked out from behind Mr. Davis and glanced at Mom. She was glaring at me with a look so sharp it could pierce through me. She didn't say anything, but I knew exactly what she wanted. Go along with my story. But I didn't care anymore. Whether she got arrested or not, it wasn't my problem. If I were being honest, I wish she would just disappear from my life forever. So I spoke clearly, without hesitation. She's just the woman who gave birth to me. She's not my mother. And I don't know that man at all. My uncle and aunt took me in, and they are my parents now.
You little. What are you saying?
So you're saying she was lying about taking you shopping?
The officer ignored Mom's outburst and asked me again. I nodded without hesitation. Yes, it was a lie. They suddenly forced me into the car. I was really scared.
Got it. Thank you.
The officer stood up and walked toward Mom. Then, he reached out his hand toward her.
There's a discrepancy in your statements. We'll need you to come with us to the station for further questioning.
Then, Mom slapped the officer's hand away and suddenly lunged at me. Her eyes burned with rage as she grabbed at me.
You ungrateful brat. Do you know who raised you?
But it was Dad who brought me up. I wanted to say it, but fear froze my voice. Stop it! Mr. Davis shielded me with his body, trying to hold her back. But Mom's rage only grew.
Everyone just keeps treating me like garbage. Kids should just shut up and do whatever their parents say. A parent has the right to do whatever they want with their child.
Children aren't property. Just because you're a parent doesn't mean you can do whatever you want.
What did you just say?
Mom was shaking with fury. She raised her hand, ready to hit Mr. Davis. I squeezed my eyes shut, but before she could strike, an officer grabbed her arm.
Calm down. Violence is not acceptable.
When I opened my eyes, I saw Mom's hand firmly held by the officer. Instead of calming down, though, she turned her rage on him.
Let go of me. I told you I'm her mother. Get your hands off me.
That's something we need to discuss at the station.
There's nothing to talk about.
Then, she yanked her arm free, and without warning, punched the officer. I gasped in shock, and even the teachers looked stunned. The officer she hit didn't even flinch. Instead, he calmly glanced at his watch.
3:58 p.m. You are under arrest for assaulting an officer.
What are you talking about? Let go of me.
3 officers immediately restrained her and dragged her toward the patrol car. Even as they forced her inside, she kept struggling and yelling, but there was no way she could escape from multiple officers. Eventually, she and the man were taken away to the police station. After receiving a call from the school, Sophia rushed over in a panic and took me home. When Kyle heard what had happened, he was furious and went straight to the police station, but they wouldn't let him see Mom since the officers were still questioning her. Kyle stayed angry for a while, but when I said, "It's okay now," he finally calmed down and returned to his usual gentle self. I liked Kyle better when he was smiling instead of angry, so I was really glad he went back to normal. About a month later, when I had almost forgotten about the whole incident, Kyle suddenly approached me with a serious expression.
Anna, I need to talk to you about your biological mother. She was sentenced to prison.
Sentenced. I tilted my head in confusion at the unfamiliar word, so Kyle explained it in simpler terms. It meant that when someone does something bad, they receive punishment right away. Mom had been found guilty of trying to abduct me and assaulting a police officer, so she was going to jail. So, does that mean she will never get out?
No, she will eventually. But apparently, she also borrowed money from loan sharks, so life after prison might be even worse for her.
I heard another unfamiliar word, loan sharks, but Kyle didn't explain it in detail. All I understood was that Mom had borrowed money from someone. And unless she paid it back, she would always be chased by dangerous people.
That's why, to make sure she never tries to come back for you, we're thinking of moving somewhere she can't find us.
We're moving.
Yeah, but only if you're okay with it.
Kyle and Sophia both looked at me with worried expressions. They were probably afraid that I wouldn't want to move. I felt sad about leaving my school friends behind. But the thought of Mom showing up again and trying to take me away was much scarier. I understand. Let's move.
Wait, you're really okay with it?
Kyle seemed a little surprised that I agreed so easily. He blinked a few times and asked again. Yeah, I can make new friends. And besides, as long as I'm with you and Sophia, anywhere will be fun.
Anna.
Kyle's eyes welled up with tears as he looked at me. Before living with him, I never knew he was such a crybaby. Oh geez, Kyle, you cry way too easily.
I can't help it.
Sniffling loudly, Kyle blew his nose into a tissue, still struggling to stop his tears. Watching him, Sophia and I couldn't help but burst into laughter. I prayed to God in my heart that this happiness would continue no matter where I moved. After that, we moved to a peaceful countryside town, and I started attending a new school. Unlike my old school, there was only one class per grade, but everyone quickly became my friend. They even taught me all kinds of fun games that I could never have played in the city. I loved my new life in the countryside, spending my days feeling free and happy. Kyle and Sophia were just as kind as ever, and even though we had moved, the three of us continued living happily as a family. I had no idea what happened to Mom after that, but she never came looking for us. I was sure I would never see her again. From now on, I would cherish the memories of Dad while creating many new ones with Kyle and Sophia.
Sunday night, in the quiet of my home, the sound of the TV echoed through the room. It was the usual scene coming from my husband's room. And there was only one reason: his love for historical dramas. Everyone in the family knew that this was his non-negotiable time. But I had reached my limit. My daughter's wedding was just around the corner. While the whole house was busy preparing, my husband was sitting in front of his TV, completely absorbed in his drama, as usual. Tears welled up in my daughter's eyes, worried that he might not even attend the wedding. My heart ached watching her, and I made up my mind. He is going to your wedding, and I will make sure he regrets it. I'm Karen, a 50-year-old working mother. I've been married to my husband, a businessman, for 25 years. We have one daughter, Madeline, and I always thought we were just an ordinary family. But over the years, my world slowly lost its color because of my husband's indifference. It all started when our daughter entered kindergarten. On the day of her first sports event, I said to my husband, "Let's go together." But as always, he was sunk deep into the couch, glued to the TV.
It's the climax of my historical drama today.
He said it so casually, like it was nothing. The fact that he cared more about the ending of a historical show than his daughter's big day felt like a cold blade piercing my heart. I wanted us to share these moments of our daughter's growth, but that wish never reached him. And this happened again and again. Her first recital, sports events, birthday parties. Each time, I swallowed my pain, never blaming him. Maybe he was just too overwhelmed with work, I told myself. So I raised our daughter alone, making excuses for him. But as she grew up, my frustration turned into anger. He was living just for his own enjoyment. Did he even love his family? That question haunted me constantly. One day, my daughter asked me,
Mom, why is Dad always watching TV?
Her innocent question left me speechless. And at that moment, I realized something. His indifference wasn't just hurting me, it was leaving scars on our daughter too. It all started during our honeymoon in Boston. While strolling through the historic streets, we stumbled upon period drama filming. The actors in elaborate costumes, the perfectly recreated old-town scenery, it was breathtaking. But my husband was captivated by something else. The intensity of the set, the focused expressions of the staff, the passion of the actors bringing history to life. It all struck a deep chord in him.
It takes so many people to create one masterpiece. History is incredible.
That day, something awakened in him. On our way back home, he said,
One day, I want to make a show like that.
From then on, he devoured history books and watched historical dramas nonstop. Especially those grand-scale, historically accurate dramas, he couldn't get enough. Never did I imagine he'd become such an obsessive fan. We first met in college, in a history club. I loved historical novels and studied ancient history. He was more into medieval history and could go on for hours about famous war heroes. One night at the club gathering, he asked me,
Which do you prefer, The Great Gatsby or Gone with the Wind?
I was overwhelmed by his passion, but I answered his question. From there, we got into all kinds of historical discussions, and before we knew it, we had gotten to know each other. He was incredibly knowledgeable about history and taught me so much. For example, I learned about the romantic relationships of nobles, things I had never known before. Listening to him talk, I felt like I was being drawn into the world of history. And before I knew it, studying history with him became something I truly enjoyed. Even after graduation, we kept in touch, occasionally reading history books together or visiting museums. Even after we got married, his passion for history only grew stronger, and eventually, he became completely obsessed with historical dramas. Historical dramas hold a special place in American television history. The 1965 drama about the life of William Penn was groundbreaking for its use of historical facts and real-life filming locations. As the U.S. experienced rapid economic growth, these historical dramas became a beloved form of entertainment. Famous figures like George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, and even classic American literature were frequently adapted into major productions, creating national buzz. My husband's love for historical dramas soon led him to join a fan club. In the club, members shared their thoughts on episodes, watched together, and even exchanged recorded tapes. Since my husband spent all his time at home outside of work, I thought it was fine for him to have a hobby. But when he started going out every weekend, I began to worry about how little time he was spending with the family. He became indifferent to our daughter's events, prioritizing his fan club meetings over school activities held on weekends. I remember thinking, this is just too much. Our daughter's big moments won't last forever. Can't you skip the club for once? When I pressed him, he started making excuses. We need a certain number of people to rent out the screening venue. I was chosen as the team leader this time, so I have a responsibility. But our daughter's event was planned first. Can't you do something about it?
I can't help it. Thanks to this club, I've made business connections. Even my last bonus was partly because of it. So stop nagging me over something this small.
Tying it back to work left me at a loss for words. After all, school events happen only a handful of times in a lifetime. We both worked. At first, we split the chores. Weekdays were my responsibility, and weekends were his. But once he started going out on weekends, he began neglecting his share.
Hey, the school play is next week. I've been practicing so hard every day. I really want you to come.
Our daughter pleaded with him.
Yeah, but the club is important too. Your mom will be there, and she'll take photos and videos, so I can watch them later.
Wait, so you're not coming?
Come on, having a dad who knows a lot about history and is successful at work is something to be proud of. I'm trying to be a cool dad.
If you really want to be a cool dad, start by putting your family first when making plans. I was beyond frustrated with my husband's complete lack of interest in attending our daughter's school play. That night, after our daughter had gone to bed, I confronted him in anger. Enough already. I'm not saying you have to quit your club, but there's a limit to how much time you can spend on your hobby. Don't you see how lonely she feels? You only get to see your child grow up once.
What's the big deal? Can I enjoy my own life? Just because I have a family, does that mean I have to give up everything? I have stress too, you know.
And what about my stress from handling all the housework and childcare on top of your share?
Oh, come on. Keeping the family together is a wife's job. Stop acting like a victim. You knew what you were signing up for when you had a kid. Don't dump your responsibilities on me. I don't want to hear any more of this nonsense.
With that, he stormed out of the room. He does whatever he wants, but expects me to just take care of the household. It's so unfair and self-serving. I felt a surge of rage, and the word divorce almost slipped out of my mouth. I had thought about it before, more than once. But actually going through with it would mean negotiating with a man who refuses to listen. There would be child custody issues, moving arrangements, so much to sort out. Even if I got custody, could I manage financially? He made more money than I did, and putting our daughter through college on my salary alone would be a huge challenge. Could I even get proper child support from him? The thought of handling all this kept me up at night. Meanwhile, my husband's obsession with historical dramas kept getting worse, and he started going on club trips every weekend.
You probably enjoy it more when I'm not around.
That's how he justified it, but let's be real, traveling every single weekend is not normal. What kind of club even does this?
You're so annoying. Stop questioning my hobbies.
And just like that, he would leave without a second thought. Time passed, and our daughter grew up and got engaged. My husband showed no interest in our daughter's engagement at all, shutting himself away in his room like a drama protagonist, retreating from the world, only leaving for his club activities.
I'm the one getting married. Can't he at least be a little happy for me?
My daughter, wearing the wedding dress she had dreamed of since childhood, gazed at her reflection in the mirror over and over again.
Dad, can't you look at me instead of history?
Her quiet words pierced my heart. As the wedding day approached, I was exhausted from lack of sleep and filled with rage toward my husband. What is wrong with him? I knocked on his door again and again, but there was no answer. He had been locked in his room since yesterday, completely absorbed in his drama. I stood in front of the door and took a deep breath. My heart pounded like a drum. I knocked again, harder this time. The dull sound of my frustration echoed through the hallway. As usual, no response. While we were all busy preparing for our daughter's wedding, my husband shut himself away in his room like a warlord from a historical drama, as if he were one of the characters. How can you be lost in a TV drama when your daughter is about to get married? What kind of person does that? I nearly kicked the door in frustration, but forced myself to stop. But I quickly suppressed the urge. I took a deep breath and pressed my ear against the door once more. All I could hear was the TV and his low voice. It sounded like he was talking to the characters on screen.
I hate my wife, my daughter, and my country relatives. Let's leave this world together, my love.
Hearing those ridiculous words from his mouth, I lost all hope. I can't do this anymore. I'm going to explode. Our daughter was at the most beautiful moment of her life, yet he refused to be there for it. I felt like my heart was about to shatter into 1,000 pieces. Why does he make his own family feel so abandoned? I deliberately asked loud enough for him to hear, but there was no response. Only the passage of time continued to cut into my heart. The clock hands moved relentlessly, and dawn was approaching. I lay down on the bed, but I couldn't sleep. At this rate, he was bound to cancel his attendance at the wedding at the last minute. I couldn't take it anymore. I needed to talk to someone. The next day, I picked up the phone and called her. It was his grandmother, Kathy, who had raised him. My husband lost his parents in a car accident when he was in elementary school and was raised by his maternal grandmother. And when it came to her, my husband never disobeyed. Over the phone, she fumed. How could he be drowning himself in historical dramas when his daughter's wedding is right around the corner? I'll teach him a lesson. Seeing her so furious gave me a glimmer of hope. If anyone could get through to him, it was the woman who had raised him. Without hesitation, she came over to our house. Despite her usual strict demeanor, there was a hint of amusement in her eyes that reassured me.
I've got an idea. We're going to drag him into history.
Huh? I leaned in to listen. What do you mean? She gave me a sly smile. Her plan was to expose his twisted obsession with historical dramas in front of all the wedding guests. She knew that my husband loved nothing more than showing off his extensive historical knowledge in front of people. If we dangled that opportunity at the reception, he would undoubtedly show up. And once he started talking about his favorite subjects, he could easily go on for over 3 hours. Just like a drama protagonist uniting the country in the final episode, he would passionately praise historical dramas, eventually getting so carried away that he'd even start reenacting scenes. The guests, overwhelmed by his bizarre behavior, would inevitably start leaving one by one. Once he saw people walking out on him, he would finally realize how foolish he had been. I feel bad for Madeline, but unless he experiences that kind of humiliation, he'll never wake up. I resolved to go along with her plan. And then, the wedding day arrived. As expected, my husband locked himself in his room, immersed in his historical dramas, and flat out declared that he wouldn't attend. All right, time to execute the plan. Kathy and I burst into my husband's room with the force of kicking down the door, shouting, "It's time for battle. A commander who hides in his castle can't win a war."
What the hell?
My husband was caught completely off guard. I said, "Get moving. You're going to show off your warrior spirit at the reception."
Fine. I shall ride into battle.
Without realizing it was a trap, he agreed to attend, eager for the chance to flaunt his love for historical dramas. At the reception, about 100 guests gathered, mostly family members of the bride and groom. I felt bad, but we had my daughter wear a bold, multi-layered gown styled after a noblewoman's robes from centuries ago. Meanwhile, my husband arrived with a huge grin. As he entered, the theme song of his favorite historical drama played.
I am Abraham Lincoln.
He declared, striking a dramatic pose. The venue fell silent at the absurd scene, his outfit, the era, the theme, all completely mismatched. He marched down the aisle, banging on a drum.
Everyone.
His ridiculous antics caused a stir among the guests.
Thank you all for listening. I am the bride's father. I am honored to host such a grand celebration today. Now, I'd like to take this opportunity to explain the fascinating aspects of history as seen through historical dramas, my passion. What I am about to share is the tale of a young hero.
My husband began his wedding speech like a narrator from a historical drama. And the speech went on and on. After nearly 2 hours of his unbearably dull monologue, the guests started exchanging confused glances, murmuring among themselves. Then, one by one, they began leaving. Just then.
You're making a fool of yourself, basking in your own glory while ignoring your guests. I'll put an end to this nonsense.
A loud voice boomed across the hall. It was Kathy, my husband's grandmother. She stood there in a traditional robe. It was a brilliant act to entertain the weary guests who had been suffering through my husband's pointless rambling. Her commanding presence was like a historical drama heroine.
Oh well, this is quite.
My husband, who had been enjoying himself, was now completely thrown off by Kathy's intensity, stumbling over his words.
This is your punishment.
With that, Kathy snatched the drum and drumsticks from him.
The drum.
My husband was too stunned to understand what was happening. Then Kathy began pounding the drum right next to his ear with all her might.
Boom, 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 boom.
The thunderous sound echoed through the hall.
Now, this is what a real victory drum sounds like.
She played masterfully, wielding the drumsticks with precision. The booming sound seemed to shake my husband's very core, making his head spin.
Enough. Please stop. I'm sorry.
At last, my husband surrendered.
Your daughter's wedding is more important than your ridiculous fantasies of conquest.
With that, Kathy smacked him on the head with a drumstick.
Ouch.
Finally, he seemed to snap back to reality, sitting there sulking like a scolded child. But even this punishment wasn't enough to break his twisted obsession with historical dramas. As soon as the wedding was over, he threw himself back into his club activities. Frustrated, I decided to investigate this so-called historical drama club while he was out. As I searched through his things, I found a borrowed videotape he had left behind at home. The label had the club's name on it, so I looked it up online and found their official website. The organizer's social media account was listed as a contact, so I checked it out. There were plenty of pictures of my husband and other club members, but oddly enough, none of them showed any actual screenings. There were many posts mentioning fun after parties following the screenings, often decorated with heart emojis. This had to be a singles meetup group disguised as a historical drama club. I was too stunned to speak. Abandoning his family to chase after young women, my husband's disgraceful behavior filled me with rage. But what caught my attention the most was a recent photo I found on social media. The same woman appeared in multiple pictures, always close to my husband. As I dug deeper, I found both my husband's and this woman's accounts. My husband wasn't using his real name, but his profile picture, his back turned, was unmistakably him. He had been liking her posts non-stop and leaving ridiculous comments like, "Your new haircut was cute, but this outfit looks amazing on you too, my princess." Inside the bag that held the recorded video, I also found a hotel receipt labeled couples discount. Not only was he neglecting his family, but he was also likely cheating. I wanted to find out exactly how my husband was spending his weekends, so I consulted my grandmother, who introduced me to a well-known private investigator. According to the detective, my husband had been pretending to be single at the club and had been spending the night at a hotel with that woman every weekend. After hiring the investigator, I started staying at my parents' house on weekends. One day when I returned home, I found my husband drinking in the living room.
Where the hell have you been, leaving me all alone?
Didn't you say you preferred being by yourself? I'm going to start living at my parents' house from now on.
What? A wife's job is to support her husband. You should be putting me first.
I ignored my husband's yelling and walked out of the house. I was certain he wouldn't come near my parents' home since he was terrified of my strict father. No matter what hardships lay ahead, I was determined to get through them and divorce this idiot husband. A week after I left home, my husband called me nonstop every day. Eventually, I got fed up and answered out of sheer annoyance.
Finally, you picked up. Looks like you've come to your senses. Isn't it about time you came home? I'll forgive you. Out of the kindness.
What kind of nonsense are you talking about? His usual condescending tone made my blood boil. I have no reason to go back.
Are you seriously refusing when I'm telling you to come home?
And why exactly should I obey you?
Because I'm the head of this household. It's only natural. If you won't listen, I'll have you executed.
You call yourself the head of the household, but I haven't seen any money deposited into our account. Want me to send you a photo of the bank statement?
No, I transferred the money. Stop making baseless accusations.
Oh, then we'll need to take this up with the bank and demand an investigation.
Wait, no. That won't be necessary.
Realizing he had been caught skipping the deposit, my husband started panicking.
Well, you see, I've had a lot of expenses lately. That's all. Anyway, you can come back anytime.
He rushed through his words and abruptly hung up. Hearing him stumble over his excuses was hilarious. The investigation revealed that the woman he was cheating with was single and living with her parents. If she was meeting up with my husband, they obviously needed a place, and if he was booking hotels, it was no wonder he was running out of money. Another week later, my husband started calling me frantically again.
Hey, because of you, I'm dealing with a huge misunderstanding. Fix this now.
What are you talking about?
The neighbors are spreading weird rumors that we got divorced.
Apparently, people in the neighborhood had noticed my absence and started asking questions.
My wife just went to visit her parents for a bit. No big deal.
That was the excuse he had given, but since we lived in a company-owned apartment complex, rumors spread like wildfire. Now people were saying we were on the verge of divorce or already divorced.
Go around and tell everyone nothing is wrong.
Unable to handle the gossip, he was now trying to blame me. No worries, I already explained everything to them. I told them I won't be living with you anymore.
Why would you say something like that?
My husband was panicking now that his lie had been exposed. The rumor had already spread beyond just the neighborhood. It had reached the wife of his boss. I was sure he was getting plenty of judgmental stares from his coworkers. Serves him right. You only ever care about your own room, but have you checked mine? When I asked him, he scoffed. Huh? Why would I even do that? Reluctantly stepping into my room, he was left speechless by what he saw.
Wait, what the hell? There's nothing here.
I already moved everything out.
No way.
He must have been so shocked that he dropped his phone, and with a loud thud, the call was disconnected. 3 days later, at night, I was watching our home from the apartment next door with someone I had planned this with.
Welcome. I'm so happy you came.
I can't believe you actually invited me to your place.
Thinking it was safe at night, my husband had brought his mistress home.
I missed you so much. I just want to marry you as soon as possible. I'll give you all my love.
As he whispered his nauseating words, she slowly leaned in toward him. Just then, "Oh no, an intruder has broken in!" I shouted as I walked through the door.
What? Why are you here?
My husband was so startled that he flailed around, breaking into a bizarre dance. It was the same pathetic dance he had performed at our daughter's wedding. "Oh, and who might this be?" When I asked, my husband quickly blurted out, she's the intruder. Hurry, catch her, and call the police." Desperate to get out of the situation, he scrambled for an excuse. But before he could dig himself any deeper, the woman lost it.
You told me you'd give me all your love. And now this? How dare you call me an intruder after inviting me here?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Before he could run from his own words, she pointed at the camera next to the TV and smirked. "You do know that camera caught everything, right?"
What?
His already foolish expression turned even dumber. She pointed at the camera set up next to the TV and grinned.
You two were in on this. You set me up.
"Oh my, so you actually know this so-called intruder? Well, that doesn't really matter. I can check all the footage from this camera on my phone. I heard every single cringeworthy sweet line you just fed her. But if you have an explanation, I'm all ears."
No, I got nothing.
Watching him panic, the woman burst out laughing.
Should we tell him now?
"Sorry for taking so long to show up."
Seriously, it was hard keeping a straight face while listening to all those cheesy lines.
Seeing both of us laughing hysterically, my husband turned pale and froze.
Wait, you two know each other?
Not understanding the situation, he kept glancing back and forth between us, confused. "She's your mistress, right? From your little drama club." Taking my cue, the woman explained.
I was stupid enough to believe you when you said you were single. I sincerely apologized to her.
What? What is happening?
Still unable to process anything, he just stood there in shock. I then pulled out all the evidence I had gathered, pictures of the two of them together, among other proof of his affair. "So, still planning to play dumb?"
I'm sorry. Please, forgive me. Have mercy on me as a warrior would.
Finally realizing there was no way out, my husband broke down in tears, dropping to his knees.
I was wrong. I want to stay with you.
Apparently, he had learned proper kneeling posture from his historical dramas. It was almost impressive. Not a chance. Here, divorce papers and a financial settlement bill. Quit struggling and sign it. Finally, he picked up the pen and signed as I commanded. As for the woman, I saw her as a victim too. I wasn't going to ask for anything from her, but she was serious about making amends and insisted I take compensation to mark the end of it. My husband had lied to her, saying he was in a serious relationship with marriage in mind. Because of that, she demanded a small settlement from him, which she then handed over to me. The divorce was finalized, and the settlement and child support were paid all at once from his savings and loans. His grandmother, who had raised him, along with other relatives, chewed him out thoroughly. He was kicked out of the company's family housing and forced to move into a tiny apartment for single tenants. Though he still worked at the company to pay off his debt, he kept making mistakes and was demoted. A few years later, my ex-husband suddenly sent me an email.
How have you been? Lately, I keep remembering all the things we went through. Doing housework is tough, and nights feel so lonely. I still regret that you couldn't fulfill your duty as my wife. But if you're up for it, I might be willing to give you another chance.
His ridiculous Romeo-style email, combined with his usual condescending tone, left me speechless. I read the email with my daughter and her husband, who were visiting my parents' house, and we all burst into laughter. Until when you would be foolish like that? I sent that reply and immediately blocked his email. Later, I heard that my ex-husband had been arrested for trespassing at a film studio. And the way he got caught was absolutely hilarious. He had sneaked into the props warehouse, put on a ridiculous feudal lord's wig and white painted costume, and was standing there admiring himself while holding a folding fan. Truly an idiot. Free from his control, I felt like a butterfly emerging from its cocoon, spreading its wings into a new life. A well-timed midlife divorce. It wasn't an easy decision, but I can still vividly remember the overwhelming relief of breaking free from that suffocating life. After the divorce, I focused on my career and found more time for hobbies. But above all, the best part was being able to spend more time with my daughter. Weekends became our tradition for taking my parents on short trips to beautiful scenic places. During our last trip, my daughter and I did the barbecue under the night sky. Gazing at the countless stars, she turned to me with a smile and said, "Mom, I'm so glad you look happy now." Her words touched my heart deeply. It felt like I had finally come out of a long, dark tunnel and stepped into the light. Now that I can do what I truly want, I realize I am finally happy.
Mom, you ordered a burger for Sarah too, right?
Of course I did.
You say that, but you're not playing favorites by getting us premium burgers and giving her just a regular one, are you?
Everyone's getting a premium burger.
Hey, Kevin. On New Year's, my mother-in-law, Mary, spent her pension to treat us to burgers. But without even looking at the food, Kevin started snapping at her. I tried to pull at his sleeve to stop him, but he wouldn't even look my way. It's always like this. Kevin automatically assumes my mother-in-law is mistreating me and starts accusing her, even though nothing like that is happening. Mary, looking hurt, insists she didn't do anything, making me feel incredibly uncomfortable. Meanwhile, our kids just glance at the TV, wearing expressions that say, "Dad's talking nonsense again." Why did I ever marry such a stubborn man? No matter how many times I regret it, there's no real harm or justifiable reason for divorce, so I just have to deal with it. At the exact same moment I let out a sigh, Mary does too. Honestly, I get along with her better than I do with Kevin at this point. It's almost funny. But even then, I never imagined he would go on to do something truly outrageous. Sarah. For my 50th birthday, my son and daughter chipped in to buy me a coffee maker, and now I wake up excited every morning. I've always dreamed of starting my day with a strong cafe au lait made from an espresso machine, just like at a cafe. But Kevin doesn't drink coffee, and he always said it was an unnecessary luxury, so I had given up on the idea. Then, now that my kids are working adults, They told me, "Mom, it's time for you to enjoy life too," and pooled their money to get it for me. With their kindness added to the mix, it's easily one of the top 10 best gifts of my life. I feel lucky to have such sweet children, but Kevin, well, he's another story.
What's that? Did you win it in a contest or something?
That's what he said, completely serious, when he saw the coffee maker my kids had carefully chosen and given me on my birthday. It's for my birthday.
Huh? But my birthday's next month.
Exactly. Today is my birthday. At my deadpan response, Kevin's face visibly tensed.
Just kidding. Like I'd forget my beloved wife's birthday. How weird though, I swear my present was supposed to arrive today too.
He pulled out his phone and pretended to check something before quickly scurrying off to our bedroom. He was definitely about to place an order right now. Most likely, he'd pick whatever bouquet with sweets had the best reviews on Amazon. Even though I've told him I can't have fresh flowers because of my allergies, there's no way he remembers. Every year, he forgets my birthday, then rush orders something I don't even like and hands it to me with a smug face, as if saying, "I got you something fancy, so be grateful." Kevin is the kind of person who's hyper-aware of trends and public opinion, but completely oblivious to the people closest to him. It's not that he likes or dislikes me. He just assumes that whatever's popular must be something my family likes too. When our kids were little, he once waited in line from the crack of dawn on a release day to buy them a set of trading cards, just because they were a huge craze. But the kids had zero interest in them and just tilted their heads, wondering why their dad even got them. Or when they wanted to try making a fire on a camping trip, Kevin insisted on taking us to some big-name theme park instead because everyone loves it. And when neither the kids nor I reacted enthusiastically to these things, he would get angry and say, "I spent all this money and time on you." Some people say, well, at least he's trying to make his family happy, even if he's a bit off, but this has been going on for over 20 years. Even a dog or cat would have learned by now. If we were just dating, I might have broken up with him, but it's not quite bad enough to justify divorce. So year after year, the stress keeps slowly piling up. And Kevin's misguided assumptions don't stop there. In early December, when the whole town was decked out for Christmas,
I'm going to my mom's alone again for New Year's.
Kevin puffed out his chest and declared this proudly over dinner. He was clearly waiting for praise. There was nothing to praise, of course, but as always, I just nodded. Thanks. I'll enjoy a relaxing time at my own parents' house then. Satisfied with my words, Kevin chugged his beer. Ever since my father-in-law passed, my mother-in-law, Mary, has been living alone. But according to Kevin, she never liked me and has been mistreating me since the beginning. To protect me from this terrible mother-in-law, he's been acting as my shield, and for the past 10 years, Mary and I have had no contact. Kevin alone visits her for New Year's and summer holidays. A devoted husband, selflessly standing up for his wife. At least, that's what Kevin believes. The truth is, there's no actual conflict between Mary and me. Okay, there was some tension in the past, but it was all caused by Kevin in the first place.
Back in the day, daughters-in-law and mothers-in-law were supposed to be at odds, and men naturally took their mother's side. But these days, men who defend their wives are seen as more admirable.
Kevin, ever obsessed with trends and appearances, latched onto this idea and started scrutinizing every little thing between Mary and me, looking for drama. There was no way Kevin could correctly read other people's emotions.
This chicken soup tastes different from Mom's.
Maybe Mary and I prepare the broth differently. When Kevin asked with a puzzled look, I answered casually. But that very night, he went to Mary and told her this.
Sarah says your chicken soup broth is awful. Maybe you should learn from her.
Then, during another visit to his parents' house, if there were fewer forks than people at the table, he'd start shouting.
You're trying to keep Sarah from eating, aren't you?
Anyone with eyes could see it was just a small mistake by looking at the number of plates and bowls. But Kevin would huff and puff, as if he had just uncovered undeniable proof of mother-in-law harassment, and berate Mary. Then he'd turn to me with a smug face, like he had just saved the day, making me look like the evil, ungrateful daughter-in-law. In the early days of our marriage, this left both Mary and me feeling suspicious of each other, creating a tense and uncomfortable atmosphere. But every time Kevin accused her of something, Mary would come directly to me and ask, I heard from Kevin that you didn't like such and such. Is that true? Thanks to that, I was able to explain what I had actually said before Kevin twisted it into something else. After doing this back and forth enough times, we realized neither of us harbored any ill intentions. The real problem was Kevin. Even when I told Kevin, Mary and I don't dislike each other. I've never had a problem with her, he didn't understand. Instead, he just gave me a saintly smile and said, You don't have to pretend anymore. For 10 years, I tried to change Kevin's way of thinking, but it was pointless. Eventually, both Mary and I got fed up and decided to play along with his delusion. To him, we were a mother-in-law and daughter-in-law at odds, completely estranged. But behind the scenes, we'd meet up normally, even going on trips together. Completely unaware of any of this, Kevin proudly headed to his parents' house again this New Year's, thinking of himself as this strong husband protecting his wife from her cruel mother-in-law. Divorce timing is tricky, I thought vaguely to myself as I watched his back disappear. But this year, the 25th year of our marriage, the perfect timing finally arrived. And it all started with Kevin's sudden increase in overtime and business trips. For the past few years, Kevin had been preaching about how staying late and working overtime for free is outdated and would come straight home at the end of his shift. But now he was suddenly working late every night. And every 3 months, he would go on business trips, staying away from home for days at a time. Something was definitely off. You've been really busy lately, huh? I asked, my tone laced with sarcasm. Kevin's fingers stopped for a split second as he scrolled on his phone. But then, he quickly resumed and answered.
Yeah, they're opening a new office in New Orleans next year. I got chosen as part of the launch team, so things have been hectic.
Oh, that sounds tough.
Yeah, but they need me. I'll be away a lot, so you might feel a little lonely, but I'm sorry about that. Well, the kids are grown now, and you don't need help with the house or anything, right?
Right. The words flowed smoothly from Kevin's mouth. But even while pretending to be concerned for me, he never once looked up from his phone. Suspicious. Whenever Kevin acted like this, he was lying. With my suspicion nearly confirmed, I discreetly reached out to the wife of one of his colleagues. Just as I expected, there was no new office being set up in New Orleans. Kevin was still going home right on time after work. And of course, there were no business trips. He was cheating. If not 100% guilty, he was about 99.9% there. No, forget it. He was definitely guilty. He's probably seeing another woman. Lately, had started taking his phone with him even into the bathroom, whereas before, had just leave it lying around the living room. He never cared about his body odor before, but now he was using fancy shampoos and body washes. And the cherry on top, the sudden influx of random gifts. Out of nowhere, he would bring home flowers or cake and hand them to me with a big grin.
Surprise.
What's going on with you? You used to forget my birthday every year.
Well, this year is our 25th anniversary. I just wanted to say thanks and let you know I love you.
This man, who forgot both our 10th and 20th anniversaries, suddenly cared about 25. I knew from experience that Kevin only bought gifts when he had a guilty conscience, not because he genuinely wanted to make me happy. So now, he was trying desperately to cover up whatever he was hiding. Love me? Don't make me laugh. Anger bubbled up inside me. But at the same time, I felt relieved. At last, I had a reason for divorce that everyone would understand. Now, how should I take him down? As I prepared dinner for a husband who may or may not come home tonight, I started running through my divorce strategy in my head. But as life often goes, things didn't play out exactly as I had planned. Or rather, I underestimated just how unhinged Kevin really was. Before I could even execute my plan, things escalated faster than I ever expected. This year, just like every other, Kevin proudly announced that he would be heading to his parents' house alone for New Year's to play the role of the good husband. Then he gave me this explanation.
I have a business trip right after New Year's, so I'll be flying straight from my mom's place to the job site.
A business trip right after New Year's? It wasn't a common scenario, so I couldn't help but voice my skepticism. Kevin must have realized he had slipped up because he immediately started rambling in a panic.
Oh, the new office is opening in April, so it's a really busy time. And I also decided to spend time with my mom until January 4th this year. She's 77, you know? Even if you don't get along with her, she's still my only mother. I just want to be a good son while she's still around.
I see. As if you're just planning to meet up with your mistress right after New Year's. I nodded as if I believed him.
You should go visit your own mom and spend some quality time with her, too.
Thinking he had successfully fooled me, Kevin let out a relieved sigh and smiled. Afterward, I called Mary to let her know I'll be visiting after New Year's again this year.
I see. I heard Kevin will be also spending the holidays at your parents' place this time. I hope he doesn't cause any trouble.
Huh? Wait, what? That was the first I had heard of that plan. Had Kevin really just told me he would be at his mother's house, while telling his mother he would be with my parents? Was he seriously planning to spend an entire week with his mistress after New Year's? If that was the case, he could have at least come up with a lie that wouldn't unravel with the slightest bit of checking. I was dumbfounded, but Kevin must have been so convinced that Mary and I hated each other that he never even considered we might still be in touch.
Sarah?
Mary looked at me curiously, waiting for my response. Why am I the one stressing over this when Kevin's the one who's guilty? As irritated as I was at the unfairness of it all, I couldn't let her find out about his affair just yet. I didn't want my plan to fall apart. I liked Mary, but she was still Kevin's mother. If she found out her son's marriage was in danger, who knew how she would react? Though I see, he's been really busy lately, so maybe he just forgot to tell me.
Oh, is that so?
I didn't like going along with Kevin's lies, so I kept my response vague.
I'm really sorry he's so inconsiderate. Oh, by the way, there's somewhere I've been wanting to take you. A new shopping mall just opened up, and they have an all-you-can-eat dessert buffet I think you'd love.
Oh, that sounds amazing. Mary, who knew way more about my tastes than my own husband, invited me out. I immediately made plans with her for January 7th, the same day Kevin had claimed he'd be on a business trip. While I was at it, I also looked up private investigators that operated during the New Year's holiday. Then, January 7th arrived. It was my shopping day with Mary, as well as the day Kevin was supposed to return from his fake trip back home and his fake business trip. I left the evidence gathering to the private investigator, and on the way to the shopping mall with Mary for the first time, I silently wished in my heart, may this finally be the end of Kevin and me. Then, after thoroughly indulging in the all-you-can-eat dessert buffet, I rubbed my overly full stomach while browsing through stylish shops. Mary found her favorite Haribo gummies and grabbed a bag to snack on in the car, carrying it happily in her hand. Then, my bag vibrated, an incoming call. I pulled out my phone and saw the name on the screen, Kevin.
Oh, it's Kevin.
Mary said, reading the screen from beside me. The clock read 2 p.m. Wasn't he supposed to be home in the evening? Is his little affair already over? Not thinking too much of it, I answered. The next thing I heard was Kevin screaming at the top of his lungs, loud enough to distort the audio.
Sarah, it's bad. Mom.
What? His panic was so extreme, it sent a wave of tension through my body.
Mom. She choked on a piece of candy and got rushed to the hospital in an ambulance.
What Mary did?
Ah.
At my reaction, nearby shoppers turned their heads toward me. Even Mary was looking up at me in shock. But I couldn't afford to care about that right now. Because Mary choked, got taken away in an ambulance. Then, what? Huh? Mary and I locked eyes, completely frozen. You've got to be kidding me. I was totally stunned. I gently placed a hand on Mary's shoulder and led her out of the shop before switching my phone to speaker mode. Kevin, are you telling me that Mary choked on candy and had to be rushed to the hospital? As I explained the situation so far to Mary, she let out a small huh in surprise. But Kevin, caught up in his own over-the-top performance and fueled by adrenaline, didn't notice.
Yeah, I just got a call from the hospital. She's in the ICU now.
Is she okay?
I don't know. They removed the candy, but she hasn't regained consciousness.
No way. I glanced at Mary. She was staring at my phone screen, her face pale.
That's why I'm heading to the hospital now. I'm just getting back from my business trip, so I'll go straight there.
I see. I get it now. I was wondering why he'd make up something as extreme as Mary being in critical condition, but he just needed an excuse to stay away from home longer. He really doesn't want to leave his mistress, huh? I stole another glance at Mary. She looked away from my phone and locked eyes with me, silently signaling her understanding of the situation. Despite her confusion, she was staying calm and giving me the green light. I gladly took the opportunity to shake Kevin up a little. Wait, Kevin.
Huh?
I'm going to the hospital too.
What?
Kevin's panic was blatantly obvious.
No, you don't have to. Mom's treated you horribly all these years, hasn't she?
I can let all of that go. This is her life we're talking about, right?
Sarah.
Even through the phone, I could hear Kevin fumbling for words.
I appreciate the thought, but hospitals don't want too many visitors this time of year. Infection risk and all that. They're only allowing one visitor per patient.
Then I'll wait outside.
Huh? No, that's...
Why not?
It's snowing really hard back home. It's freezing. If you get sick, I'd feel awful.
It hasn't snowed there in over 10 years.
Mary muttered this flatly, her face devoid of emotion. The bus was about to leave. Time to wrap this up. All right, I understand. But before we hang up, I just want to see your face and make sure you're okay. I mean, even M's shaken up by this.
Yeah, of course. Give me a sec. I'm at the train station, so I'll move somewhere quieter.
I heard shuffling noises through the phone as Kevin hurried around. A moment later, the call switched to video, and Kevin's face appeared, standing in front of what looked like a public restroom. Oh, good. You look better than I expected.
Right? I mean, I'm still in shock about Mom, but don't worry, I've got everything under control.
That's my Kevin. So reliable. Mary will be relieved too.
She will?
Of course. Right, Mary?
Yeah. Huh?
I slowly tilted my phone so Kevin could see my screen. On Kevin's phone screen, he now saw Mary, who was completely expressionless, staring straight into the camera like a stone-faced mask.
Oh yes, it's very reassuring to see my son staying so calm, even though I'm supposedly dying in the ICU.
What?
Hello there. I am the mother you claimed is choking on candy and fighting for her life in a hospital bed.
Mary casually pulled a pack of Haribo from her shopping bag and took a dramatic bite. Kevin's jaw dropped open like a cartoon character, his eyes widening in complete disbelief.
What? How? Huh?
Good news. Mary's miraculously regained consciousness. We'll be heading home together now, so you can come back and join us anytime you like. Oh, and bring Haley with you.
Wait. What? How do you know her name?
Crash. Kevin disappeared from the screen, replaced by an image of the ceiling as something clattered loudly. Then from somewhere in the background, an airport announcement rang out. Due to technical issues, flights from Hawaii to New York have been delayed. Oh, I see. So you were enjoying a little tropical vacation with your girlfriend, huh? And now your return flight is grounded? Well, take your time. Have as much fun as you like. We'll be waiting to have a nice, long talk when you get back.
Wait.
Kevin's wails of despair echoed over the airport noise. I calmly ended the call. The rest of the bus ride was, of course, spent filling Mary in on all the details. At this point, Kevin's cheating wasn't just a suspicion. It was confirmed, with a mistress name and all. When I explained how Kevin had lied about being a devoted son while sneaking off to Hawaii with his affair partner, Mary's expression turned from blank to furious. Then, looking on the verge of tears, she apologized to me. I never blamed her for Kevin's actions, but I did regret keeping his lies from her and having to break the truth like this. But, Mary, I have to say, the way you took a bite of that gummy bear, that was iconic. At that, she let out a teary-eyed laugh. The next day, Kevin finally managed to catch a flight home. When he walked into the living room, where Mary and I sat waiting in silence, he immediately launched into a desperate flurry of excuses. But no matter what he said, there was no way he could talk his way out of this. He had lied about his own mother's life to manipulate me. And he had done it right in front of her. How did you ever think a lie that bold would work? You really never imagined that Mary and I might actually talk to each other?
But you and Mom don't get along. I thought you'd be happy if she was out of the picture.
You really don't know a damn thing about me, do you? Even if we did hate each other, you think I'd be happy to hear she was on her deathbed?
I'm sorry.
Kevin shrank back, clutching his head in fear. What a fool. An absolute, irredeemable fool. We never had the kind of feud you imagined between Mary and me in the first place. We just pretended to dislike each other because it was too exhausting dealing with you constantly trying to stir up drama.
Wait, no way. But she's my mother-in-law, and you're the daughter-in-law.
Just because that's what your so-called common sense tells you doesn't mean it applies to us.
That's awful. You two tricked me.
I explained it to you over and over, but you were the one who kept brushing it off, saying, "Spare me the good daughter-in-law act."
Oh, no.
Kevin collapsed to the floor, trembling as I finally let out all my pent-up frustration. I still have plenty to say, but let's continue this conversation properly. I took a deep breath, pulled a business card from my bag, and slapped it onto Kevin's forehead. His fingers trembled as he peeled it off, his face instantly drained of color.
A lawyer?
Divorce proceedings tend to go more smoothly with a third party involved, don't you think?
Divorce.
Oh, and bring Haley along too. If you don't, I might have to pay a little visit to her workplace.
No way. This has to be a joke.
I'm nothing like you, Kevin. I don't lie.
But I was a good husband, a good father. I took the kids on trips, bought them all the hottest toys. I even got you expensive gifts for your birthday and anniversaries. I put you before my mom, and just for one little mistake, you're divorcing me.
Oh my God. How many times do I have to say it? Mary and I never had a problem with each other. I told you I'm allergic to fresh flowers, that I don't like sweets, that the kids wanted to go camping. But you never listened. Instead, you just trusted online reviews and trending articles over your own family. And let's not forget, you never once managed to get my birthday present on time.
No.
This is pointless. I have way too much to say, and it's not getting us anywhere. Anyway, I'm not coming back to this house. You're free to live here with your precious Haley, right, Mary? I turned to Mary. Even though I had just exploded and Kevin was practically cowering on the floor, she had been silently observing. Finally, she let out a small sigh.
Do whatever you want. As for me, I'm just going to pretend I never had a son.
What? Mom?
Kevin looked at Mary in sheer disbelief. But I was the one who couldn't believe it.
How did you ever think using your own mother's life as an excuse to cover up your affair was forgivable? Did you think I wouldn't be hurt by that?
That's not what I.
Did some article on your precious internet tell you that a mother forgives anything her child does? Sorry to disappoint you, but I must be different from the average mother.
Well,
Yesterday, your mother choked on that candy and passed away, all thanks to her ungrateful son.
no.
I never want to see your face again.
No.
Kevin let out a wretched cry and curled up on the floor. Seems he finally understood the gravity of what he'd done. But he still hadn't even uttered a single word of apology. I felt not a shred of sympathy for him. You crossed a line no decent person should ever cross. If only you had spent half as much effort actually listening to us instead of obsessively reading internet gossip, maybe things wouldn't have come to this.
I'm sorry.
Ignoring Kevin's groaning, I placed my house keys on the table. Then, supporting Mary by the arm, I turned toward the door. Not even a hint of regret held me back. 3 months later, I was officially divorced from Kevin. I had overwhelming evidence of his infidelity, making it an easy victory. As for Haley, she couldn't run away since she was caught at work. So she surrendered early. Kevin finally got his divorce, but he didn't end up with Haley, not because I interfered, but because Kevin was trying to quit his job. For the days he had pretended to be on business trips, he had actually taken leave by lying to his company, saying his mother was seriously ill or that I was in bad health. Even though they found it a bit suspicious, Kevin, as their manager, had told them, "A company that values family over work will benefit you all in the long run." So his subordinates ended up covering his workload for him. And then came this betrayal. Word quickly reached upper management, and Kevin was demoted. His coworkers' attitudes toward him turned icier than the winds of Siberia, leaving him stuck in a living hell. For someone who loved online gossip so much, he should have known that cheaters, both men and women, have been getting slammed by public opinion lately. But of course, he had only ever absorbed what was convenient for him. And as for Haley, once she realized Kevin, a 52-year-old man, was hinting at wanting to quit his job and freeload off a woman 15 years younger, even her love-struck delusions shattered. Well, at least she paid the settlement money, and she did give me the final push I needed to leave Kevin, so I wasn't about to hound her any further. Of course, with both Haley and I abandoning him, Kevin completely panicked. I had already moved far away, so I was safe. But Mary, who was still at the old family home, had to endure multiple desperate visits from Kevin. Still, she never forgave him. Eventually, Mary's younger daughter and her husband took her in, helping her move to an apartment near their home. Since they lived several states away, Kevin couldn't easily track her down. With nowhere else to turn, he tried pleading with our son and daughter. But after years of his nonsense, they shut him down instantly, saying, "You brought this on yourself. There is no way we're ever living with you again." And that was that. Kevin finally realized he had screwed up, but it was far too late. With no one left to rely on, and unable to quit his miserable job, he was forced to endure his personal hell. This was the fate of a man who blindly chased trends and selfish desires, never once cherishing what actually mattered. 3 years later.
Sarah, look at this. Look how many strawberries they put on top.
Wow, I want one too. Once again, Mary and I were out on our shopping trip, enjoying an extravagant dessert buffet. Technically, since I divorced Kevin, we were no longer in-laws. But after 25 years of fighting the same battle, we had become more like old war comrades. Even at 80, Mary was full of energy. Just last year, she had happily polished off a medium rare steak during one of our vacation tours. From time to time, I still receive Kevin's desperate messages. "I'm lonely. Isn't it time to come back?" Mary also still received gifts from him, gifts that completely missed her tastes. Every time, we'd show them to each other, laugh in exasperation, and celebrate the stress-free lives we had now.
Oh, Sarah, this store has a limited edition Haribo flavor.
Are you getting some?
Of course.
Make sure to chew it thoroughly.
Yes, yes. We wouldn't want the boy who cried wolf to have his lie come true, right?
We exchanged a mischievous glance and burst into laughter. From Kevin's perspective, this must be a nightmare. He had lived his life clinging to generic, mass-market values, never once forming real personal connections. A truly pitiful man. If only he had actually looked at the people around him. If only he had tried to understand their hearts, maybe then his life could have been richer. Smiling at a beaming Mary, I grabbed a pack of Haribo for myself. The limited edition flavor, something I'd never tried before, had a gentle, nostalgic sweetness. Not too overwhelming, just right.
It's too bad you came home because you didn't want me to leave you. But will you sign this divorce paper right now?
I had undergone a transplant surgery to save Zoe's life, spent about a month in the hospital, and finally returned home. Even after the surgery, I suffered from severe anemia, leaving me so weak that just standing was a struggle. And yet, Eric, like a heartless demon, shoved the divorce papers straight against my chest. I glared at him, disgusted by the filthy, pathetic version of the man I had once admired. I'm Olivia. I just turned 30 last month, but I'm still working as hard as I did in my 20s. Since I started my career, I've been completely dedicated to my job, steadily building my track record. Now, as a mid-level employee, I've been entrusted with training several new hires. I've always had a strong sense of justice, and no matter who I'm dealing with, I treat them as equals. If something is wrong, I feel the need to say so outright. I just can't let things slide. While many of my former colleagues left the company to get married, I kept climbing the career ladder. I'm sure there were plenty of people who resented me for it, especially some of my senior managers, who didn't like seeing a woman in her 20s get promoted. They didn't hold back, using their position as a shield to throw cruel words straight at me.
If you keep acting all high and mighty at work, you're gonna miss your chance to get married. But hey, you've got it good. You can work as much as you want, and when you get tired of it, just get married and have someone take care of you.
I always thought I was mentally strong enough to handle things like that. But when you're hit with that kind of malice head-on, it still stings. Before I knew it, I was 28, battling through workplace challenges. That year, I was assigned to a newly established department within the company, which only fueled my drive even more. From what I heard, the department was assembling a team for a new project, specifically scouting employees with proven track records. I shut down the managers who had constantly belittled me with nothing but my skills, proving that my hard work had never been in vain. At that moment, I felt unstoppable. But then, something happened that would change my life forever. That was when I met my future husband, Eric, who had been transferred to the newly established department. Eric was 5 years older than me and had originally worked in sales at our company. He is tall and effortlessly stylish in a suit with a gentle and handsome face. His polished, clean-cut appearance and bright, friendly smile made him popular, not just among the female employees, but also with colleagues and even managers. I was one of the many who secretly admired him, but at the time, I was more passionate about my career than romance. So, I chose to see him strictly as a work partner. Work quickly became more hectic than I had anticipated, and for the first time since joining the company, I was completely drained every single day. Struggling to coordinate with my clients, I found myself constantly apologizing, and my stress started wearing me down. Even the usual snide remarks from my manager, which I could normally brush off, started hitting harder. I was so overwhelmed that I ended up crying alone in a bathroom stall one day. That's when Eric noticed something was wrong before anyone else did. Even though he had his own heavy workload, he stayed late to help me with mine. I felt guilty for relying on him, but at the same time, I couldn't help but appreciate his support. I had always believed that I needed to handle everything on my own, but working with Eric taught me that doing everything solo wasn't always the right approach. As we worked together, we started grabbing drinks after work, and our bond naturally grew stronger. As we grew closer, our conversations became more personal, and I found out that Eric had been through a divorce after his ex-wife cheated on him. He was now raising his daughter, Zoe, on his own. I felt terrible when I realized I had unknowingly kept him working late when his daughter was still just a grade schooler.
Zoe is only 10, but she can cook for herself and wakes up on her own to get to school. I do feel bad for leaving her alone so much, but she's really independent, almost like a little wife.
Eric gave a sad smile. Seeing that vulnerable side of him for the first time stirred something in me. From that moment on, I started seeing him not just as a colleague, but as a man. The first thing I decided was that I couldn't keep burdening him. I became even more diligent at work, doing everything I could to minimize overtime. I also made an effort to help him whenever I could, making sure he could leave early to spend more time with Zoe. I honestly wanted to go out for drinks with him like we used to, calling it a cheers to hard work night. But I couldn't bring myself to take away his time from Zoe, who was still in grade school. In the end, my sense of restraint won over my selfish desire. Over time, Eric's attitude toward me changed. He started letting his guard down, confiding in me in ways he didn't with anyone else.
I've never had this much support, both physically and emotionally. I've been able to spend more time with Zoe too. Olivia, I really appreciate everything you've done for me.
When work finally settled down and we went to a bar, he told me that, and before I knew it, I blurted out a confession in the heat of the moment. He gently turned me down at the time, but once I had let my feelings out, I couldn't hold them back. I kept pursuing him relentlessly. About a month after my first confession, Eric finally gave in, and we officially started dating. A year into our relationship, we got married, but my parents had strongly opposed it multiple times before that.
It's not about him, but this is your first marriage. And he has a daughter in elementary school. She's about to enter a tough age. Are you sure you can handle all?
That's what my mom said, while my dad just gave me a complicated look, Since my parents had an arranged marriage at 18, they seemed uneasy about Eric being divorced with a child. But I was so in love with him that I managed to convince them, promising that no matter what happened, I would never become a burden to them. And so, we finally made it to the finish line. Between work, I gradually prepared for the move and focused on adjusting to my new life. After we got married, I started spending weekends at Eric's house, making an effort to bond with Zoe. I tried playing the games Eric told me she liked, and I even cooked her favorite meals, but her reaction was lukewarm at best. She went along with it, but barely spoke when we were together, and as soon as we were done, she would immediately retreat to her room.
She's shy and quiet, so maybe she's just nervous.
Eric said with a chuckle, but I felt like that wasn't the case. For someone who was supposedly nervous, she looked me straight in the eyes when she spoke. Rather than being shy, she just seemed uninterested. Looking through old photo albums and framed pictures, I saw plenty of photos of her smiling brightly, surrounded by her friends. She didn't seem like a quiet or withdrawn child at all. I was frustrated that Zoe wouldn't open up to me, but I decided I just had to wait and give her time. Then, something terrible happened. One weekend, as usual, I was at Eric's house preparing dinner when I suddenly heard a loud thud from upstairs. Eric was in the shower, so I immediately stopped what I was doing and rushed upstairs. There, in the hallway, I found Zoe collapsed on the floor. Zoe. I instinctively reached out to shake Zoe, but then I realized that calling an ambulance was the priority. With trembling hands, I dialed 911. Fortunately, the ambulance arrived in less than 5 minutes. As Eric stood there in shock, still unaware of what had happened, Zoe was taken away. I asked him to drive us to the hospital, and once we got there, I sat anxiously in the waiting area, shaking as I waited for her to come out of the treatment room. I had no idea how much time had passed, but by the time I looked outside, the sky was already completely dark. A nurse guided us in, and we listened as the doctor explained the situation. I was so shaken that I could barely understand what he was saying, but I managed to grasp the key points. Zoe had a genetic condition, and the only way to treat it was through a transplant. As part of the preparation for the procedure, the doctor wanted to test both Eric and me. We agreed without hesitation. The next day, the doctor called me directly and told me that my organs were a likely match for Zoe. I had always thought I was prepared to go through with a transplant if it ever came to that. But when I was actually faced with the reality, fear of the surgery and doubts about whether I could really save Zoe consumed me. When I told Eric, his expression darkened.
If this increases Zoe's chances even a little, I know it's a lot to ask, but I'd really like you to do it. I wish I could take your place instead. If I could switch places with you, I'd do it in a heartbeat. But if you're the only one who can save her, please, consider it.
His voice was strained, and he looked like he was on the verge of tears. That was the moment I made up my mind. I called the hospital and scheduled the surgery right then. It was about a month after our procedures when I was finally able to see Zoe again. Her body had successfully accepted the organ I had donated. Because she was young, her recovery had been quick. On the other hand, I struggled with severe anemia for a while and had to use a wheelchair around the hospital. Eric, who had been visiting me after work, was worried.
You still look pale. Have you been feeling like this the whole time?
Not exactly. To be honest, even the doctors hadn't given me much reassurance. But with both Eric and Zoe waiting for me to come home, I didn't want to say anything that would make them worry. Still, there were days when I felt completely drained, and sometimes the medication left me unable to hold a proper conversation. The longer I stayed in the hospital, the more restless I became, constantly thinking about work and home. I just wanted to get discharged as soon as possible. In the end, I was finally allowed to leave the hospital a few days after Zoe. Holding back my excitement, I headed home. Since it was a weekday afternoon, I called a taxi so I wouldn't trouble Eric. While I had been in the hospital, he had finished all the remaining moving arrangements. Starting today, the three of us would officially begin our new life together. I wonder what kind of expression Zoe will have when she sees me. I felt a little guilty for thinking this way, but I hoped this experience would bring us closer. As I thought about what meals I could cook for Eric and Zoe once I was well enough to handle housework again, I had arrived home. I thanked the driver and steadied myself as I stepped out, still feeling a little unsteady on my feet. The moment I walked in, I immediately sensed something was off. Unread newspapers were piled up near the entrance, with postcards, envelopes, and junk mail scattered carelessly on top. Garbage bags filled with food scraps were thrown on the floor, and the entry mat was flipped over, left in a mess. Just looking at the entrance, I was speechless at how unkempt everything was. I told myself that maybe Eric had been too busy with work and didn't have his energy to clean up. But that thought was completely shattered the moment I stepped into the living room, where I stood frozen. Empty food containers with leftover crumbs were scattered across the floor. The trash can was overflowing with wine bottles, and there was a foul smell, as if something had been spilled and left untouched. The floor was sticky. I wasn't a clean freak, but the sight in front of me was unbearable. My head started pounding.
Oh, you're back.
I turned around and locked eyes with Eric, who was sitting on the couch, its cover stained all over. He was wearing a wrinkled, sweat-stained t-shirt that looked like he had been in it for days. What's going on? Where's Zoe? And what about work?
I took the day off to wait for you because I was worried. And now you're gonna start nagging me the second you get home.
I could smell alcohol on him, and his words were sharp. If you were so worried, why didn't you come pick me up? The thought reached my lips, but I swallowed it back. He was already irritated. I didn't want to provoke him further. I'm not trying to lecture you. I just want to know what happened.
This happened because you took your sweet time in the hospital. And Zoe, after all the times I went to visit her, she kept acting like a brat. It pissed me off. She's probably still locked up in her room.
Eric had never spoken badly about Zoe before, so I was stunned. Then he looked me up and down and clicked his tongue.
If you're well enough to come home by yourself, shouldn't you have thought about getting back sooner for your family? You're such a selfish woman.
Then, without warning, he shoved a piece of paper into my hands. I stumbled slightly from the force, steadied myself, and looked down at the paper. To my shock, it was a divorce document. What is this?
Sorry to ruin your big dramatic homecoming, but this is how I feel. You stay in the hospital, rack up medical bills I have to pay, and then come home just to nag me about the house being a mess. That's on you. I don't care about your anemia or whatever. If you can't handle housework anymore, you're just dead weight. And Zoe doesn't seem to like you much either, so this works out perfectly.
Eric smirked, his usual warmth replaced with pure cruelty. I told you, I'm not trying to scold you, and I do feel bad for being away for so long. But my anemia has improved a lot, and I can handle housework again. Now that I'm home, let's just try to get along. I desperately tried to reason with him, but he wasn't listening.
It's obvious you're just trying to leech off my money now that you can barely take care of yourself. You took a taxi home today, playing the role of the devoted wife, just so I wouldn't leave you. Pathetic.
He was talking nonsense. I tried again and again to correct his misunderstanding. But no matter what I said, Eric seemed determined to paint me as a defective woman. Someone broken because I had lost an organ, incapable of handling work or household chores, a useless wife. When he claimed that he had no choice but to divorce me because of my condition and even mentioned demanding alimony, I was completely speechless. I had always thought that treating a wife cruelly after she saved a daughter's life as a donor was something that only happened in TV dramas. Despite risking my life to donate an organ for Zoe, Eric didn't offer a single word of appreciation. Seeing his cold-heartedness, I could feel my love for him fading rapidly. I didn't regret the transplant itself. To me, Zoe was already my daughter, and I was genuinely relieved that my organ had been a match. I was happy to have saved a young life with a bright future ahead of her, but I had no intention of wasting any more energy on a man as rotten as Eric. If he wanted a divorce, I was ready to fight back. Fueled by that determination, I grabbed the pen and signed the divorce papers without hesitation. I'll be getting a lawyer, so have them communicate with me from now on. There was no way I was going to pay him alimony, and I made that very clear. Eric's smug, careless attitude irritated me to no end, but I refused to let him ruin my health after all I had been through. So, without another word, I grabbed the belongings I had used in the hospital and walked out of the house for good. Just as I had said, the legal battle dragged on for months, but in the end, his alimony claim was dismissed. The money I had saved during our marriage was subject to division, but all the savings I had before getting married remained mine. The divorce was finalized, and I was certain I would never have to deal with Eric again. A year after our divorce, I was back to working just as hard as I had in my younger years. The company I worked for was one of the bigger firms in the area, so fortunately, once I was transferred to a different department, I hardly ever ran into Eric. The transplant had made one of my organs slightly smaller, but my regular checkups showed no issues, and my physical and mental health were perfectly fine. I had been told that the hospital would contact me if anything ever happened to Zoe, but since no such call had come, I assumed she was doing well. My coworkers were considerate enough to avoid mentioning Eric around me, so I tried to think of him as someone who had simply disappeared from my life. One weekend, as I was relaxing in my newly leased apartment, Eric unexpectedly showed up at my door. When I checked the intercom, the poor video quality made it hard to recognize who it was, so I carelessly opened the door. Since the day I left, Eric had become even more unkempt, looking nothing like the former star of the sales team he once was. The sight of him made my skin crawl, but since it was daytime and there were people around, I kept my voice as low as possible. "What are you doing here? We agreed a year ago that we'd never see each other again. I've been getting updates about Zoe from the hospital, so I have no reason to talk to you." I spoke coldly, but to my surprise, Eric smiled gently.
I even asked someone from your department to find out where you were. How's your health? I heard you went back to work a while ago, so I was worried. Things were hectic back then, and I was under a lot of stress. That's why I was harsh on you. I had no choice. It was all to support you. You understand that, right? Now, I think we could build a better relationship. Why don't we give it another shot?
It was as if he had utterly erased everything that happened. His attitude had made a complete difference. He didn't seem to pick up on my clear rejection, and the fact that our conversation wasn't even making sense anymore only made the situation feel even more unsettling. Even though my face had gone pale, Eric kept talking as if he didn't notice or didn't care. At one point, he grabbed the slightly open door and tried to force his way in, but I resisted with all my strength. That's when Eric snapped, shouting disgusting insults that I didn't even want to repeat. Realizing that things had escalated beyond what I could handle, I managed to yank the door shut, locked it, and ran inside to call the police. After I explained the situation, the police arrived quickly and took Eric away. From that point on, his behavior spiraled completely out of control. He started showing up at my department every day for no reason. If I went to the restroom or cafeteria alone, he would follow me, spewing insults. He even sought out the new hires I was training and fed them lies about me. His behavior was blatantly inappropriate. Anyone could see that. Even after receiving a direct warning from the head of Human Resources Department, he only managed to behave for a few days before going right back to it. Ignoring him was becoming impossible, and my stress was starting to take its toll. I finally decided to report everything to the police. There was no way I was going to let someone like him take away the one thing that brought me the most happiness, my career. Determined to stand my ground, I went ahead and filed a claim for damages. Later, a ruling was made recognizing Eric's actions as particularly malicious, and my claim was granted. Around that time, I received an apology from a man who had given Eric my address. Apparently, he had once been Eric's coworker and couldn't bring himself to refuse when Eric asked, out of gratitude for the help he had received back in the sales department.
It's not exactly an apology, but
He began telling me about Eric's current situation. After our divorce, Zoe left a note saying, "I'm going back to my mom's," and disappeared from Eric's home. Apparently, he had just returned from a week-long business trip when he found her room completely empty. Desperate, Eric reached out to his ex-wife, not expecting much. But that's when he uncovered a shocking truth. It turned out that Zoe and Eric were not biologically related. Zoe's condition had been genetic, but no one in Eric's family had ever suffered from the same illness. The same was true for his ex-wife's family. It turned out that Zoe was actually biologically related to his ex-wife's current husband. I was stunned to realize that the rift between Eric and his ex-wife had existed for over a decade. Maybe their divorce had been caused by her infidelity, but the fact that Eric had fought for custody despite barely taking care of Zoe made me think he had only done it for the sympathy that came with being a poor single father. When his ex-wife took Zoe back, she discovered multiple bruises on her body. Zoe told her mother that they were from Eric. Determined to regain custody, his ex-wife took him to court and won. This pushed Eric further into stress, leading him to bring alcohol and cigarettes to work. He was also seen recklessly gambling away his money. Of course, he was fired. The child support payments he had been receiving from his ex-wife were cut off, and on top of that, he still owed me the settlement money. Now, he was drowning in debt, and no one knew where he had ended up. At this point, no one knows where he is or what he's doing. This incident made me decide to change my job. Even though I had done nothing wrong, being treated like an untouchable topic or stared at with curiosity was affecting my work. And since Eric knew my address, I decided to take the leap and move out of state to start my new life. Every now and then, I receive letters from Zoe and her mother. Knowing that Zoe is doing well and receiving repeated words of gratitude from her mother gave me confidence that I had done something truly meaningful. I had saved a life.